if you just joined us, we were talking about milk cartons a few seconds ago.
Yep. Stewart's, the real. Yeah.
Just no context there. Roll with it.
It was delicious. I'm glad I found it. Just like this program.
Yes, I'm going with the double monitor display tonight because I have people in my house this time.
Yay!
So these guys get to see my lovely PowerPoint presentation on the big screen.
Woo!
Woo!
Alright, what was I doing here? We have a couple of minutes here before we start.
Everyone, introduce yourselves with your name and one private personal detail that we can use to identify you.
Alright, you go first.
No, people in the chat stream there.
You volunteered.
I volunteered all of them, yes.
I'll go. I'm Laura, and I probably have the longest hair out of everybody in the Rogi community.
Certainly out of everyone here right now.
Well, that's not hard to top us, yeah. I think that's plausible.
Thinking about this.
Well, most road geeks are bald anyway, so she's already ahead of half the people.
The good ones are.
Well, and the lousy ones, too.
Haven't met any of those yet.
One attendee has none. That's right. And that attendee is Alps. I just gave you away.
No shit. Yes, and one moderator in the live chat has none also.
Wait,
Who that is?
So if he has none, which little piggy went to market?
No. One little piggy said Gimel and took all of it.
What? No, that's not how it's right.
Happy Hanukkah!
You can say hey.
Hi there, good evening, and welcome to another live webinar episode. We're here at the beautiful Roadway Wiz World Headquarters in the Hudson Valley of New York State. Tonight we're going to be focusing on the largest city and the state capital of the great state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma City. Let's meet our panel tonight. Leading off, she joined us last week, if you were with us. She did a great job. She always does a great job every time she's on. That is Laura Bianca Pruitt, a.k.a. Mrs. M.D. Rhodes. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Dan!
Yay!
Yay!
And Laura, you should introduce someone over there.
Over here?
Is she not joining you for this?
No, she and Mr. MD Rhodes are downstairs watching Peppa Pig. They'll probably go out and look at Christmas lights later. Because every Saturday night in between Thanksgiving and Christmas is Winter Wonderland in the town of Bel Air.
Okay, well, there you go.
Woo!
You should move with your auntie and your uncle there, people.
See, you know what? When Laura conceived Rainey, I've been calling her ever since then the Fresh Princess of Bel Air. See, that's not bad, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's not bad, right? I was telling Anthony a little while ago, I have good ideas every once in a while. And speaking of Anthony, here he is. Anthony's with us. He's a regular contributor to our live shows. He's making his debut appearance on Season 4. It's good to have him here at headquarters. And Steve's also here. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Would you like to actually introduce yourself?
Perhaps.
All right, well, go ahead.
When was the last one of these? It's been...
Well, the last one that you were here for, I don't know. It might have been one of the Philly ones.
It's been a few weeks.
No, it's been more than a few weeks.
We were both here for I-476.
Yeah, that was what, September?
Yeah.
Something like that. October? Something like that?
So I am back in action. Much changed in my life, which I will not go into in a live stream, but it is notable that I am back in action here, so I'm glad that I'm still here to be part of this.
Yay!
Steve of AARoads.net. AARoads on Facebook recently posted I still have a few signs out there. If you know me, if we've talked in chat, if we've met in person, the more I know you, the more I'd love for you to have one of these signs to take home and clear out my den of the ones remaining. So do give a shout, do give a look, and always nice to connect with you people. So
I would like to do another interview with you at some point.
that
Just throwing that out
We
there.
may not be able to air that one.
I mean, we can pick whatever we want to talk about that we can air, but I wasn't necessarily talking about that.
TBD.
But TBD.
All right.
I'm just putting that out there so that everybody knows that I floated the idea out there so that people can hold it against me if it doesn't happen.
I will put it out there that I already accepted that when you proposed it months ago. So
Yeah, see, I don't even remember that, but okay. I'm not surprised. All right. YouTube stuff.
Oh, wait, I have to answer a question in chat. Thank you, Mark, for pointing this out. Yes. Remember how last week I mentioned that there was supposed to be that I wasn't going to be here because of a family party? Yeah, so unfortunately, my uncle and my aunt are they're on the mend. They're on the road to recovery, but they're both ill. So my brother canceled our family gathering tonight, so that is why I'm here. So yes, I feel like this is sadly a recurring theme where because I know there were a couple times we were supposed to have it last year, and then Omicron not killed that, and then I was here instead. So yeah.
Well, damn, you have to settle for us, and I'm very sorry about that.
We're here for you.
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here. I'm sad the family gathering didn't go on, but Mike bought me a Gleegan cookie dough cupcake. He actually bought me 2 on his way home from work today. So my sweet tooth is fulfilled, and I'm ready to go.
I had a bacon espresso brownie for those who care less about their health.
Yay!
And I chugged his leftover milk. That was where the conversation about milk cartons started.
Well, now that we've come full circle.
Yes. So now
All right,
we can go back
we've
to the
made
announcements.
we've made good use of 10 minutes. Thanks, guys.
That was our story time. Now you can have yours.
Yeah, I got. You know what? This show's probably gonna be 5 hours long because I got a lot to get to before we even get to the roads. But let's try to do this as quickly as possible. YouTube, I'm continuing uploading I-35 footage. I think today I uploaded some stuff from Minnesota. I'm jumping around a bit. I'm trying to get all the I-35 content between the Twin Cities and Minnesota all the way down to Oklahoma City. Just uploading everything I got, both urban and rural. So that's going to be going on, I think, for at least another week or so. I think I still have to get the Missouri and Iowa portions of the interstate up 100%, but that'll be next week's uploads. Gribble Nation, I really got to get back to blogging and podcasting at some point. We'll see. I'm back to more of a normal work schedule now, so I'm going to see if I can't start to put some stuff together for the site. I know that Doug and Tom are continuing to cause trouble on the blog. They've pretty much resumed regular updates to the blog now. Doug is continuing, I believe, with Covered Bridge stuff on a regular basis. And I think Tom is tracking down some old California U.S. route stuff. And I know I will hear it from those two later if I'm wrong about that. But I think that's what they're up to right now. So, always a good read. GribbleNation.org is where you can find us. All right. Do I have to do this? I don't want to have to do this. You know, let's just say that I'm going to have to do this quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But, you know, it's very rare when an NFL team fires their general manager in the middle of a season. But if you are a Tennessee fan like I am, you are probably used to dysfunction. And so this stuff kind of happens on a somewhat frequent basis. In this particular case, though, I can totally see where it was coming from a long way away. And this team is no closer to a championship than they were 4 years ago. I could go on a rant for the next hour if I wanted to about the moves that the now recently departed general manager John Robinson has made to set us back really for no good reason. I think that the straw that broke the camel's back ultimately was, it wasn't just trading away A.J. Brown to Philadelphia and not getting a whole lot in return, but it was having A.J. Brown basically embarrass the team on the field in Philadelphia last week. And that is not a good look for any franchise. And, you know, I won't deny that he came in and he made this team better. You know, the team was winning 2 or 3 games a year when he came in. And he made them a playoff contender right away. But they got better and they got to a point, and they have not gotten past that point. They have been a first-round exit each of the last 2 seasons, and they probably will be again this year. And that's just not good enough. Especially when you make dumb trades and you swing and miss on first-round draft picks almost every year. You know, that's just, you're not going to keep your job doing that nonsense. So I'm glad that the owner has a pulse, apparently. You know, she's not just, you know, counting her money and taking selfies with fans. Apparently she actually does somewhat care about the on-field product, which is refreshing to see. Yeah, I would have been surprised if he had survived the season. I'm a little surprised that it happened, you know, in season. But I think that, you know, if one person had to go, I certainly would rather see the general manager go than the head coach. Those are my very concise thoughts about that. So peace out, bruh. This is a real picture of him this preseason when he was in the booth. And when he was leaving the booth, he was like, oh, because, you know, I'm so cool and I'm so full of myself because I built this amazing roster that sucks. But, you know, anyway. A little bit of story time for you. Now, some of you who follow me on Facebook probably already know this story. I don't know that people necessarily know it en masse, but this trip to Oklahoma, the stuff that we're going to cover tonight was all documented in September of this year over Labor Day weekend. And usually my trips are pretty straightforward. You know, I don't have too much to complain about, but I went through, how many different cars did I go through on this trip? I went through 3. I could have gone through 4 if I really wanted to, because I had tire issues with all 4 of them, or all 3 of them, really. What you're looking at here is me with a drill bit in my right rear tire in Wichita Falls, Texas. So that took this car out of commission. I basically drove back to Oklahoma City on the spare tire.
Which fortunately you had one. A lot of rental cars don't.
Yeah, I wasn't so sure that I was going to luck out by having one, but fortunately I did, and I was able to get back to the Avis at Oklahoma City Airport to swap out.
I want to say it's mainly 1 or 2 companies that don't, and most of the companies will try to keep them in there.
It also depends, you know, sometimes the manufacturer just doesn't put one in there, but all right, that's
I have
so
never been
Avis,
without.
so yes, I have rented cars from that Avis twice, actually.
No, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, you most recently, right?
Yeah, just in October.
That's right, yeah. But, yeah, so I flew into Tulsa originally. The first car that they gave me had a leaky tire, so I brought that one back the next day. I got the car that you see that's pictured. A couple of days later, I ran over a drill bit, so that car was fried. So I got a third car. On the last day, I was starting to get some weird tire pressure readings from that car, but I could have switched it out, but I was like, well, you know what? I got like 3 or 4 hours left. You know, let me see if I can, like, you know, coax this thing to the finish line.
Put some air in it and call it.
Well, that's what I did. I went to the local gas station and found an air hose and fixed that up. So, yeah, this was not my trip, but you know what? It still was a very successful run, and there's always something weird that happens to me on these trips, even now. You know, there's always something out of the ordinary. There's always something unpredictable that happens.
I'm used to those on my trips at this point. There's always air problems, and it's always the one day I have an hour to fix them.
Yeah, wow. But yeah, so it just goes to show that even if stuff goes off the rails, you can still recover and you can still have a successful trip, and that's what I was able to, I guess, demonstrate this time around. I sure didn't plan it this way, but I'm glad that. I'm glad they were nice enough to give me a spare tire. That certainly helped. Otherwise I would have been stuck.
Waiting for a tow.
Like
Yeah.
you're on a ramp to or from a major highway.
Well, I had just finished clinching I-44, so I was on the other side of Wichita Falls.
Okay.
Yep.
See, this was in Texas where this happened.
It was the one time in the trip when I was in Texas.
Yeah.
So it's always Texas's fault. Oklahoma City, by the numbers, it is the largest American capital city by square mileage in the lower 48. It's not the largest in all 50 because I think Juneau, Alaska is larger.
Honolulu
By
is
land
the
area.
entire island of Oahu, I want to say, officially.
It is well, right. Hawaii also doesn't have government below the county level, so it's just Honolulu County.
Right.
But
So I want to say that would also then count as larger by acreage if you.
the thing is, it's not technically a city; it's only the county.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the police cars in Honolulu say Honolulu County on them. They don't say city. Yeah. Oklahoma City is a major crossroads on the roads, the rails. Its primary industries are livestock. It's a major state for oil exploration and drilling. National defense comes into play here because of the military bases in and around the area, specifically Tinker Air Force Base nearby. It's also a pretty significant metropolis located in the middle of what we historically consider to be Tornado Alley. Over the last 25 years or so, there have been 3 tornadoes to hit the Oklahoma City metro that have been rated at least F4 or more intense. 1999 and 2013, there were 2 tornadoes of F5 strength that hit Moore, Oklahoma, which is a suburb south of town. And then there was a third tornado in F4 that hit Moore in 2003.
Yes, the lesson is don't live in Moore. That's where all the tornadoes.
Yeah, Moore's got some bad karma or something. Yeah.
There's that one homemade tornado. We're talking about that one later.
Yeah, you can bring that up if you'd like. Sure.
Well, it's more the 9 Days song in my head, but that's
Okay.
about that day in Oklahoma City.
Oh yeah.
I remember it as a kid, so I was a little too young to really speak in depth about the Oklahoma City bombing, but it's a locally generated tornado of death.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but okay.
You don't know the bombing?
Well, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you wait a couple of slides.
That's what I was asking, 'cause I didn't.
Okay. Well, I didn't know what the hell you were talking about. Okay.
No one ever does.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. Real quick on the sports, the only professional team in the 4 major sports that calls the state of Oklahoma home is the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA. They came to Oklahoma City in 2008, relocated from Seattle, where they were known as the Seattle Sonics. Oklahoma City had a little bit of a taste of what it would be like to host an NBA team because the New Orleans Hornets relocated to Oklahoma City for a couple of years in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And the city took to the franchise so much that when they returned back to New Orleans, the NBA decided to approve the relocation of the Seattle franchise to Oklahoma City instead of a couple of other locations that they had been looking into. So that's how Oklahoma City got their team. And they're pretty nuts about that team, surprisingly. They've got quite a loyal fan base. Football-wise, the greatest rivalry in the state of Oklahoma is the one between the University of Oklahoma Sooners and the Oklahoma State University Cowboys. The Sooners play down I-35 in Norman, and the Cowboys play up I-35 in Stillwater. Minor league baseball, you have the AAA Oklahoma City Dodgers. By the way, the Los Angeles Dodgers have quite a following in the state of Oklahoma, and it's because of the AAA team being located here in Oklahoma City. It's also because their AA affiliate is up the turnpike in Tulsa. The Tulsa Drillers are the AA for the LA Dodgers. So you see a lot of Dodger blue here in Oklahoma.
The original name for that team was the Oklahoma City 89ers.
And I think I know why that is.
Oh, I wonder why.
I think so. We'll talk about that in just a second.
I think we will.
It's a reference to the year 1889, by the way.
Yes.
Oklahoma City doesn't have a rich history of hockey, with apologies to rabid hockey fans like Doug Kerr, for instance.
It has college hockey.
The most prominent of the junior hockey franchises in the area is probably the Oklahoma City Ice Hawks. They've been around for quite a while. They've been the most successful of the franchises in junior hockey. Okay, so we had a reference to 1889. And 1889 is a very important year in Oklahoma history. And again, I'm going to try to do this as succinctly as possible here. So Oklahoma comes from the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, originally. It was unorganized in its early years. It was eventually organized into the Arkansas Territory in 1819. This territory was then again reorganized by the Indian Non-Intercourse Act of 1834 to create the modern boundaries of what became known as Indian Territory. And an Indian Territory remained in place through the Civil War. I do want to mention, you see this thing in the upper left-hand corner. You know, there was a show on the History Channel years ago. I don't know if it's still in reruns, but you remember the show How the States Got Their Shapes?
It was a book.
Yes!
I think
Loved that show.
Was it also a book?
There was a book. I read the book.
Okay.
There are 2 books.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the things that I had always been curious about is what's the deal with the panhandle up here? And that is actually Texas's fault. Because Texas, as you may recall, was originally the property of Spain and Mexico. And then they fought a war of independence. They became the Republic of Texas. And then a few years after that, they wanted to join the United States.
No, they immediately wanted to. A few years later, they finally did it.
Yeah, right. And
So-
so the Panhandle, therefore, was not actually part of the Louisiana Purchase. It was part of the 1848 Mexican Cession.
Right, which saw Texas join the U.S. Proper. However, Texas wanted to enter as a slave state under the conditions of the the Compromise of 1820. You could not have any state with territory north of the 36th parallel be a slave state. So, under the Compromise of 1850, Texas surrendered the land north of the 36th parallel, which created this neutral strip here that was not governed by any territory or entity for about a 50-year period until 1890, when Oklahoma Territory was officially organized in 1890. So that's the story behind how Oklahoma got its panhandle. So the land run of 1889 was the settling. It was the first major run at settling what were known as the unassigned lands of former Indian Territory that had been ceded back to the United States government through a series of treaties in the years following the Civil War. In a lot of cases, these were tribes that had been loyal to the Confederacy during the Civil War, and one of the ways that the U.S. government either punished them or were lenient towards them was to renegotiate the treaties that they had signed with these native tribes.
Do you just want to note real quick for a minute?
Yes.
So that line was 36 degrees and 30 minutes. The Panhandle is half a degree tall. The northern end of Oklahoma is the 37th parallel.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and in particular, when you're talking about the tribes, you're talking about what is the so-called 5 civilized tribes. The ones that have 4 of them have some of the largest, So the Cherokee, I'm going to mess up the way these are pronounced. I'm sorry. The Cherokee, the Muskogee, the Seminole, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw.
Yeah.
So those are the 5 tribes that were forcibly moved from their traditional lands in the southeast United States over to what is the Indian Territory.
So the 5 that are in Indian Territory minus that tiny northeast corner, those
Correct.
5 are the ones we're referring to, and everyone west of there is separate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So the resettlement of the territory, so the land run of 1889 took place on April 22nd of that year. Resettlement of the land was to be done in accordance with the Homestead Act of 1862. During that period, of westward expansion, the United States was eager to settle these lands that they had recently acquired, and so they basically gave out 160-acre parcels of land to willing settlers for free, basically, under the condition that they would tend to the land and farm it and make good use of it. And so that was really the only condition of this land run. The land run itself, to put mildly, was a hot mess. About 50,000 people rushed into the unassigned lands at a certain time, and it was basically a free-for-all. It was first come, first served. People were, there were rival groups of people who were fighting over the same lands. There were people who actually had entered the territory illegally before the land run had even started. Those people became known as Sooners. And they had actually they had made claims to land even before the land run became official. And so there was all sorts of infighting about that kind of stuff that went on for years. Over 2 million acres in Oklahoma, both farmlands and town lots, had previously been measured out by the government. The vast crowd of hopeful settlers massed literally all along the border here. So you see where the unassigned part of this is carved out in white. So these guys all lined up at the border waiting for the signal to go in, and it was basically a giant free-for-all after that. But anyway, out of the land run of 1889, certain settlements began to take shape, and one of the first ones to be born on pretty much the first day was a settlement that became known as Oklahoma City, and it eventually won out over rival communities to become the territorial capital of the new Oklahoma Territory, which was made official the following year in 1890.
I must say, as I look at the outlines of nations roughly, I'm just looking at Google Maps, mind you. Chickasaw, Choctaw, Cherokee, Muskogee, and Osage are all shown, and Seminole, are all shown outlined very high level, which gives you a perfect view of where Oklahoma City is, which is just to the left of the word citizen there.
Yeah, well, and Osage County to this day is coterminous with the Osage Nation, as you see on this map.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible that most cities that that we cover on this channel, we don't have an exact date that they started, but Oklahoma City we have the exact date, and that it went from 0 people to about 10,000 people by the end of the day.
Yeah, and it was all a disorganized mess.
It was.
There were other land runs held in future years. The most prominent of these later ones was in 1893. But by and large, by the early 1890s, Oklahoma Territory had been well established.
There's a couple more details, if you don't mind, I'd like to fill in.
Okay.
So I mentioned kind of, the 5 civilized tribes, how they were moved here. And then the Homestead Act became law in 1862. You had mentioned about how how these tribes were sympathetic to the Confederates, but there was another thing that made these lands get transferred from these tribes into the quote unquote unassigned lands, is that a lot of this land was previously communal lands that were taken from the tribes in an effort to force them to practice European American style farming. And so the United States government basically divided up didn't just divide up the lands that were settled in the Homestead Act, but also lands within the 5 civilized tribes, into the 160-acre plots and gave them to quote unquote heads of households. So in like an effort to try to, force assimilation. But before the Sooners, you also had the original OK Boomers.
There you go.
The Boomers were white settlers from in the 10 years prior to 1889 who believed that the so-called unassigned lands were public property and open to settlement. So they tried to go in and settle beforehand because they believed that the Homestead Act of 1862 covered that land. And as you said, as the years went on, there were more divisions as far as additional land rushes.
Yeah, I just want to kind of wrap this up. I know that we're just giving you a brief overview. There's a whole lot more to the story than what we're telling you. But after Oklahoma Territory gained its foothold, it was fast-tracked into the Union as the 46th state in 1907. Only New Mexico and Arizona in 1912 were the last lower 48 states to join the Union. There is one other thing that I was researching this, and I had no idea about this, but the folks in the 5 organized tribes in Indian Territory were not too happy that they were inevitably going to be absorbed into this new state of Oklahoma, and they made a last-ditch attempt in 1905 to break away from Oklahoma Territory and form their own state. The state would have been called Sequoia. As you might imagine, the United States government was not too keen on the idea of having a state basically run by indigenous people, and so they put an end to that. I question whether or not it would have been successful anyway for other reasons, but nevertheless, the Indian Territory was no more after 1907. It was part of the state of Oklahoma as it is today. And if you go to Oklahoma City, you can visit the Centennial Land Run Monument, which is a pretty damn spectacular... it's a monument that's got a series of... there are a number of different statues here, and I don't have pictures of all of them here, but I will tell you that there are at least 47 different statues spread across a distance of 365 feet on this plot of land where the monument is. All of the monuments are cast in dark bronze at 1.5 life size. In other words, a human, the average human being 6 foot, so the average human in this monument would be 9 feet. There are 38 different people portrayed. There are 34 horses, 3 different wagons, a cannon, that's important because when the command to go into the land run was given, it was a cannon shot. So there was a cannon present for this monument. There's also a dog and a frightened jackrabbit among the different statues here. It's a beautifully detailed picture of what an absolute mess the land run was. But Oklahoma City owes its existence in large part to this day, April 22nd, 1889, that is commemorated here. Now, of course, we don't...
When did they build that monument?
It was within the last few years.
That makes sense because of stuff I bet we're going to cover in this webinar.
Yeah, I think...
Looking at this sort of told me about that,
Yeah. I think they put the last statues in a couple years ago.
Based on where it's located, which I will tell people is located just south of downtown. We'll go into that in a little bit.
I'm sure we will, actually. So the modern downtown skyline looks something like this. And I have to tell you, this is just like a guilty admission of mine, that I probably took hundreds of pictures of this building that is front and center to the skyline. I love the look of this building so much. It is the Devon Energy Center. It was built in 2012. It is the tallest building in the state of Oklahoma with an 844-foot roof height, and it's 50 stories. Apparently, I did not actually do this when I was in town, but apparently there is a pretty top-scale restaurant at the top floor. So if you're looking for a hot date night, and, Anthony, you didn't go there when you were in town, did you?
No, we had dinner at places that were at ground level.
Okay, yeah.
That did not exist when I visited OKC.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful building. The sports venues downtown. Here you see the on the left is the Paycom Center. That's where the Oklahoma City Thunder play. And here's a nice aerial picture of the Bricktown Ballpark, which is where the Oklahoma City Dodgers play. A couple more pictures of downtown here. The old Santa Fe Railroad building is still here, although it's not used nowadays for Amtrak. Amtrak built their own Amshack a few years ago that is used instead. And in the lower right is Scissortail Park. It's one of the larger green spaces in all of Oklahoma. And it's the largest, it's certainly the highly publicized green space in Oklahoma City.
These are incredibly artistic photos.
Why, thank you. I will tell the creator that. I will let them know.
Absolutely. There we are.
The other thing that I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up is Oklahoma City is home to the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum located in downtown. It was built to commemorate the events of April 19th, 1995, known as the Oklahoma City bombing, when two white Americans conspired to explode a truck bomb in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The bombing killed, I believe, 168 people. Yep. It was the largest act of terrorism on American soil at the time. Mm-hmm. And the memorial is open. You can visit it. There's also a museum, which I didn't get to go in. But apparently it's worth the trip as well. There are memorial walls here. There's a reflecting pool here, as you see. It's very well done, very tasteful. It's a beautiful place to visit. It's one that I definitely recommend if you're ever in the area and are interested. This is certainly worth a few minutes of your time.
I note I do not have these interior photos like you do, but I noted the parking lot part of the structure was still intact. There is, along the street, you can see part of the structure that was there when the bomb went off. You can actually see the damage to it, for that matter. So it is for those who were not really remembering that experience, it is worth it to go learn about this. And to those who were there for it, if you have not been, it is worth it to remember that long ago. So much changed since then, but this...
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, when I was a kid, I was 6 years old when this happened. And I remembered distinctly two things from that period of my life, of my parents watching on the news every day. Mm-hmm. It was this, and the other thing... OJ.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that was on every day, too.
Those were the two.
Yep, those were the two that I remember above anything else.
I hear
it. So, yeah,
This came first, I think, by a couple of years.
It was around the same time.
No, it was around the same time.
94.
I thought this was 95.
No, the trial was in 95. I think this happened while the trial was going on.
The OJ chase was in 94, and the Oklahoma City bombing was 95.
This was 95.
Well, but I remember the trial. Yeah. I remember the coverage of the trial.
I didn't realize this was that recent. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just earlier.
Who doesn't like old maps? See, the thing about Oklahoma City that might surprise people is that the freeway system here is actually pretty old. It goes back even to the late 50s when it was conceived. Interstate designations came on in the late 50s. Some of these designations changed over the years, which we'll talk about. But most of the region went from being largely a dotted line on a map in the early 60s, like you see here, to gradually being built out in the mid-60s, like the map on the left. And then we have mostly the modern system in place in the map on the right.
Not entirely.
Not entirely, but it's mostly there. And here we have the system today. Again, you see where downtown is. It's right where I got my mouse, right there. and of course you have everything that's been gradually built out from there, to where we have the first turnpikes in the state were built in this area, and also the most recent ones as well.
You can take a poo with it.
That's right.
Not on the Simpsons.
Well, I suppose the best place to start is with Interstate 40. Let's talk about some roads now.
Woo!
That's really why we're here, right?
Go tinker with things.
Yes.
The land run monument discussion. So perfect.
So, I-40 east to west across Oklahoma City. It is, it's more or less a transcontinental route. It begins in Wilmington, North Carolina, ends up out in Southern California. So it has always been an important and significant highway in the state of Oklahoma. However, it's one of those roads that was built very quickly and built relatively on the cheap in the early 60s. And it consisted originally of an elevated freeway right through the downtown area. That was not the best built highway. I mean, it was built to what we would consider to be early interstate standards in the late 50s and early 60s. But it was not the kind of structure that was built to last.
It was sort of like 64 in St. Louis, maybe?
Well, now you're making me remember what 64 in St. Louis looks like.
It's elevated and it just feels old.
Well,
I have to say, I have a very similar vibe to it.
Okay. Well,
that one remains. This one, go on.
Well, that one, yeah. Isn't that one a double deck?
Part of it is, yeah.
Part of it is, yeah. Yeah, so there was actually talk about replacing this structure as far back as the late 1990s, but it didn't really gain steam until roughly 2007 or so. The pre-existing viaduct was built it was a fracture-critical bridge. That is not good for redundancy purposes. And right around that time, in 2007, there was that bridge on I-35W in Minneapolis that collapsed. That was also a fracture-critical bridge. So in the aftermath of that, and also the fact that there were actually holes in the deck that were opening up right around that same time, the replacement of this highway was seen as a priority at a state and at a federal level. I mean, Interstate 40 is very difficult to replace. So it took a number of years of planning and weighing a bunch of different options. Before I go any further on that, I will tell you that these two pictures that we're looking at on this slide are taken in the vicinity of Tinker Air Force Base.
The one on the right features inappropriate use of clear view.
Inappropriate use of many things.
Well, you know
many
what?
Problems with that sign.
Well, you know what? It might be inappropriate on a lot of levels, but it does its job in that it gets people's attention. So I will give them credit for that. So, remember how last week we started our discussion about the 3 R's of urban freeways? You have the replace, you have the relocate, and you have the remove options. We looked last week in Birmingham at the replace in place option. This week we're going to look at the relocate option for I-40, and that is ultimately the solution that was chosen. Laura, would you like to take the mic for a minute?
Sure. So basically, in May of 2002, that's when they secured federal funding to replace the Oklahoma City Crosstown. But then rather than replace the existing structure, they decided to build a new stretch of I-40 about 5 blocks south of the current location along old rail alignment. And basically, the idea then was, so they're relocating the I-40 a little bit further south, and then transformed the old alignment. They converted it into a boulevard. And now the western part of it is still a little bit limited access, but they narrowed the number of lanes and changed the interchanges, but then made the rest going east with at-grade intersections. And so the idea is that the city is planning to completely redevelop, this whole section of Boulevard, downtown, but then also continue south in a project that they call Core to Shore. And the most recent addition to that project is a park that stretches all the way from downtown to the Oklahoma River.
And that green triangle on the right is where that nice sculpture was placed.
Yeah, the Land Run Monument is right about here.
Yep.
See that? Yes, this was a bit of an unorthodox solution. Most municipalities wouldn't think twice about the choices that they had. They would just replace an existing freeway with a new existing freeway in the existing footprint. But Oklahoma City was keen to redevelop the south end of downtown and to also revitalize the Bricktown neighborhood. And so while they were very much in favor of retaining I-40 across the city, they also looked at it from a planning perspective and said, well, can we move the freeway a little bit and open up some new space for development and for historic preservation and all that other stuff? And so the new freeway was completed in 2012? 2012. And in the years since then, if I can show you if I blow up that map of Google Maps here, and you can kind of see downtown here. So you see where...
And crucially also, the alignment of I-40 had by July of 2012 moved. And I can tell you this because I drove through there in July of 2012, and I did not drive the old alignment. I drove the new one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the date I have here is January 5th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So...
Well, January 5th for eastbound and February 19th for westbound.
Yeah, so you see where Oklahoma City Boulevard is today. That is the old alignment of 40. That is the surface boulevard that replaced the previous elevated interstate. And in the years since the relocation of I-40, Paycom Center, which is where the Oklahoma City Thunder play, that had already been in place. But also what came online is the new Oklahoma City Convention Center, and also the creation of Scissortail Park, which I showed you on the slide previously.
That's the park that stretches.
Yeah. So, and we'll talk more about Scissortail Park towards the end of the show. But, so Scissortail Park was then therefore able to be born and expand to the size that it has. I think I mentioned Bricktown in passing, but I will tell you that Bricktown is basically the quote-unquote old city of Oklahoma City. In the early years of its history, it was warehouses, it was stockyards, it was, a lot of the early industry of the area. That's where all of that converged. And of course, all these buildings were built of brick and mortar, and so the area became known as Bricktown as a result of that. And if you visit the area today, you will still find that all of the buildings in this neighborhood are brick and mortar buildings that are perhaps a few stories tall, but they do give off that late 19th century / Western feel to them.
The older ones anyway. There's a bunch of hotels and stuff now too.
Right, there's a lot of imitation nonsense that's going on in there too. But if the authentically old stuff is still there also, and that's really neat to look at. So the elevated section of I-40 was replaced with this.
This is the second time that a Sheridan Avenue has resulted.
Well, not quite.
No,
but...
not quite. but an interesting observation, yes.
So the Oklahoma City Boulevard is largely a surface grade street. In the picture on the lower right, that's where Scissortail Park begins and runs to the south. Parts of the old freeway actually still exist on the western part of the boulevard, which you can see in the picture in the upper left.
Is it the case that Oklahoma did this and turned it over to the city, or do they still maintain it? Or?
That's a question that I can't answer.
Okay.
I don't know.
From my understanding, from what I've read, yes, that the state built it, and then transferred it to the city.
That's what I would think. Okay.
That would be the sensible thing.
Because it does not have a route number.
Right, exactly. But the state, clearly it was a state project, so they did everything, and then the city accepted it for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so all in all, the relocation of 40 was a win-win, I believe, for the city of Oklahoma City. It retained the freeway, so it kept I-40 intact, but by moving it a little bit to the south, it's really opened up the downtown area for expansion of commercial areas and entertainment districts, and also it's opened up the opportunity for the green space that they didn't have before. I think that those are both wins for the city in that respect.
I could say from having driven both old and new that the new is a very smooth sailing ride.
It's a nice drive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a very modern freeway. It does not experience backups.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so they were gonna, if they were gonna try to redesign it on a current alignment, they probably could not achieve what they did by moving it.
Yeah,
right.
or it would have taken twice as long. Because, you know,
I don't know where they would have found the room to give it that kind of geometry.
Not easily,
capacity,
that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Two more wins that kind of come out of this as well is that that ODOT really worked with the communities about 10 years ago, because originally I think they had planned for the limited access to continue even further east. But the communities were like, no, we want as much of it to be at grade as possible and to be a boulevard as possible. Because I read a couple articles from 2012 that talked about that. But then also another win is that a lot of the beams were able to be salvaged and to build county crossings across the state. That when it was removed, 2,067 steel beams were able to be reused.
Well, that's interesting, really.
And so to date, 188 county bridges have been rebuilt with the salvage beams. Most of the beams are 33 inches thick and are at least 60 feet long. A typical county bridge that spans 50 feet would use 5 beams. So the estimated value of each beam at the time was about $8,000.
We did the same thing in New York State not long ago, if you recall.
With deck panels.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
The application in this case was deck panels. This precast concrete, panels that are about 12 inches thick. New York State salvaged well over 1,000 of these panels from the old Tappan Zee Bridge in New York, and they were sold back to the counties across the state for $1 a piece. And the counties utilized them. There are a few examples around here of bridges that were basically given a new lease on life because of these precast panels that they received from the state. A lot of these bridges, again, at the county level, they're small. They're like 20, 30 feet long. So if you just slap 3 panels across, that gives you a 20-foot roadway, and you've got a new panel that can last you another 30 to 50 years or so. So yeah, it's interesting to see how, I didn't know this, that Oklahoma found a way to recycle some of its previous infrastructure in that way. That's really neat to see.
Yeah.
So the relocate gets 2 thumbs up from me. What do you say?
I say 2 thumbs up as well.
I think it works, right?
I think so too.
It seems like, they definitely got a better freeway out of it. I don't have anything to complain about with this project, certainly.
And it seems like when they redid it, they tried to minimize, like they put it in the old rail alignment. And of course, there's a whole bunch of, there was a bunch of drama involving that that we could talk for a long time about. But but it seemed like they tried to minimize the number of people that were displaced. So apparently, the realignment displaced 29 residences and 44 businesses, and impacted 14 historic properties. But that's pretty low for that long of a stretch of a highway.
It's basically right next to downtown of a major city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that this is, like I said before, it's a win-win for the city. It's a win-win for us road enthusiasts who love our roads. We get to have our new urban freeway. It works. But on a more practical level, it works from a development standpoint and an urban planning standpoint also. And so that's why I'm so impressed with this idea and how well it worked out. Again, sometimes all you got to do is just think outside the box a little bit. and you can really do something special. I would just like to interrupt the proceedings here before we go any further. I have a final score from the Army-Navy game.
So that means Army won since you're interrupting, otherwise you
I am, just so I can tell you to be quiet now. So, because, some people come to my house and they see that I'm rooting for one team and then they decide to root for the other team just to piss me off.
I am not one of those people.
Yeah, okay.
I love you, Dan, but I'm from Maryland, so I have to root for Navy.
No, well, we've had this discussion before as well. That you and I know.
I've rooted for Navy over Army for way longer than I've ever known you, Dan.
That's because you're a dope. So
no, it's because I root for the team I like.
It's because he's from New Jersey. Let's remember, the New Jerseyans are the ones who cause trouble here.
But I don't disagree with that either. Okay. Yeah, Laura, I'll talk to you separately about this, I guess, later. But, yeah, sorry. All right. I-35. It wasn't until recently when I was sort of looking into, like, the Minneapolis and the Kansas City and the Oklahoma cities of the world that I became aware of the term I-35 megalopolis. I guess that's the thing that some people use. It's not... To me, it doesn't work because it's way too spread out. But a lot of people do live along the I-35 corridor, and I will say that much. And Oklahoma City is just another pretty significant dot on the map along the greater I-35 between Minnesota and Texas.
Also, I-35 isn't one corridor, it's two corridors strung together with a dog leg, but...
Well, okay, but yeah, that's true.
Yes, okay, we're talking about okay.
No, it's sometimes two corridors by itself.
Well, 35... goes back to before the interstate system existed. There were pre-interstate era bypasses built in the Moore and Norman area. There were freeway relocations of existing U.S. highways, such as U.S. 62 and U.S. 77, that were built roughly in the mid-1950s up through the early 60s. Even in the days before the interstate system became a thing, there was discussion about building a turnpike system along a north-south axis across Oklahoma City in the early to mid-1950s. However, with the creation of the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, any proposed turnpike north of Oklahoma City into Kansas was just simply replaced by the newly created Interstate 35. Okay, now I might piss some people off, but Oklahoma City claims to be the crossroads of America, and I can probably think of 100 different towns in America that could call themselves that.
Missouri has two of them.
Well, I think the state of Indiana is one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of,
You're never going to be able
has
to.
A lot of crossroads.
You're never going to be able to. Yeah, you're never going to be able to please everybody here, but. Interestingly, the interchange between I-35 and 40 right downtown is also known as the Crossroads of America. So there's that.
Those are two pretty central interstates in the scheme of things.
Well, if you think about it, yes, that is true.
35 and 70 probably have the next best claim of the two.
That's an interesting question. Yeah. So
Kansas City does also consider it. That's why I mentioned
Kansas City is more central.
Well, there also
to...
isn't a singular interchange between I-35 and I-70, so.
Yeah. But, I mean, both cities, as do others, consider themselves...
See, I buy into that, your Kansas City suggestion, because if you're traveling on 35 or 70, you end up in the vortex that is the downtown loop.
Right.
So it's like the eye of the storm, you know what I mean? But, yeah, so here's some pictures of 35 in suburban Oklahoma City. These two are down in the Moore area. Where were these two from? These are... Nah, well, the one on the...
That's from 35 and 40, and then on the right, you've got the junction with the turnpikes up north of town.
Yeah, that's what that is. And then we looked at these. Okay, so that's that. Oh, it's time to talk about I-44. How wonderful. Now, you may know that I-44 didn't exist in a lot of Oklahoma up until the 1980s. I-44 originally ended at I-35 at that interchange that Anthony and I were just talking about, north of town at the west end of the Turner Turnpike. But it was extended along existing freeways and turnpikes out the other end of Oklahoma City, out past Lawton and to Wichita Falls in 1982, as part of the state's Diamond Jubilee anniversary, 75 years. This wasn't the only motivation for doing so, but it was a convenient time to do such a thing. So the I-44 in Oklahoma City, in that area itself, began construction in the 1950s and early 60s originally as a freeway relocation of US 66. That fabled US route that everybody loves to talk about. Gradually, though, as it was built, it was decided that it should be added to the interstate system, and its original designation was not 44; it was 440.
Why? Add a zero.
Just add a zero, yeah. So 440 existed as part of the bypass, or what was originally considered to be a bypass. If I go back to this map here, so you see how on this map there's a 440 shield here. The bypass that you can kind of see outlined here, it kind of forms an arc around the western and southern suburbs, right? North of I-40, this arc was designated originally as I-440. It was renumbered to 240 in the 1970s for continuity purposes, because people looked at this and said, well, this is stupid. Why do we have two different route numbers for the same highway? Yeah, right. Well, we'll talk about that one eventually.
Well, and you also notice at the northwest corner of downtown there how, right, on the map it really looks like two freeways are crossing, and the way the interchange is built is still such, and you can actually see it in the upper left picture here, this picture is, right, that picture is taken eastbound on I-44, which is heading north on what used to be I-440 there. And to stay on I-44, you have to take an exit to the right.
You have to take the one exit only lane.
Yeah.
The 44 is kind of wonky in Oklahoma City in that it was kind of shoehorned into existing freeways, and there are multiple times where 44, to stay on the main line, you're on a single lane ramp in order to make the transition, and this is one of those spots.
So as New York City area residents, all three of us no exception to this.
Well, I see. I don't think anything of it because of that fact. I'm used to that nonsense. But yeah, it's something that is pretty prevalent out in the burbs north of town. Yeah. I gotta tell you, 44 was probably my favorite drive in Oklahoma City because of, again, the age factor. It's an old freeway. It's very antiquated when you drive it. There's left-hand exits and entrances. Yep. There are single-lane ramps that we talked about.
You get a chance to take one of those left exits or entrances. A couple of them are fun.
I took at least one of them. That's an interesting experience. It's the as I said, it's a fun drive if you like old stuff. There's still some old signs here and there that you can find. As a road enthusiast, I enjoyed I-44 very much. I understand that it is hopelessly antiquated nowadays, but I hope they never change it because it is an enjoyable trip. What can I say? So 240 used to stretch a lot longer than it does today because prior to 1982, 240 wrapped around the city entirely. It was truncated to the length that it has today in 1982 by the expansion of I-44 westward across the rest of the state of Oklahoma. As it stands today, and I realize that this might be a time-sensitive claim here, but as of right now, it is basically just a southern bypass of the metro area, connecting Will Rogers Airport with Tinker Air Force Base. One of the larger contracts in Oklahoma DOT history is actually about to get underway in 2023 with the reconstruction of the I-240, I-35 crossroads. It's known as the 240 Crossroads Renewal. This contract, which will get underway in earnest next year, has a value of about $140 million. And it's going to be a headache for people in the south suburbs for a few years. But it's going to come chock full of flyover ramps and stuff like that, as you see on the map here. So,
as opposed to just a clover leaf, which is what exists now.
Yeah, it's a very tight clover leaf without any service roads or frontage roads, and you can see why that would become a nightmare most times of the day.
You also want to note real quick that from the photos we were looking at before, the right side had an exit for a State Route 77H. The Oklahoma does have a few routes with interesting letter suffixes.
Not just a few.
In this case,
not just a few.
In this case, that route is the historic alignment of US 77, which is why it has that number.
Oh, that's where the H comes from?
Yeah.
There are very many lettered routes, a lot of which are not signed or signed poorly, but this is by far not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say it was the only one.
No, but you made it sound like they were rare. I've happened into a lot of my accidents. I do want to note, for those looking at this topograph who are not as versed in roadway construction, there are a considerable number of properties acquired and homes demolished, especially in that northwest quadrant there, simply not being shown here. They just erased those homes to draw the new roads in, but it is abundantly clear.
Yeah, it's really tight. Like when you drive that section of 240, it's tight. Like there's businesses, there's the freeway, and then there's the frontage road, and then there's businesses.
So they are removing a ton of those businesses to get this interchange.
Presumably, yeah, because there's frontage roads on both 35 and 240 through here.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and they're broadening the curve too. You can see in white where the old ramp from 35 south to 240 west is, and the new even the green is moved significantly over. The red's the frontage road. That just takes it even further.
Yeah. So there's a lot to do here, and it'll hopefully be done in the next few years.
This.
Yeah.
Yes, because 240 doesn't have an interesting enough story already.
So this somebody proposed this.
Yeah, somebody on the fictional highways thread on the AARoads forum thought this was a good idea, apparently.
No, it was submitted to AASHTO and approved. So
what?
Has it been approved?
Yeah, so it's at this point just waiting for the state of Oklahoma to get around to signing it.
Really? I didn't know that it had been approved. That's the case?
I swear, I'm not making this up.
I'm not saying you are.
They're going to put 240 on existing toll roads, and that's okay.
As long as no federal funding was used to build them, yeah.
Wow.
Well, probably not, right?
Yeah.
The OTA is self-sufficient.
Yep.
So here's a look at the.
That was my clinch.
Well, I've still clinched it. I've driven all the roads.
As have I.
But
I drove the Kickapoo Turnpike in March of 2021 when the southern section of it was still only one lane each way because they weren't done building it.
Oh, so you drove it right after it opened,
yeah.
Basically. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I have my clinch too because I drove all these different roads. But so here's your new look, I-240. The existing part of it, for your reference, is down in this area here. And then everything else is new. Not new highways, it's existing highways throughout. It'll bring the length of I-240 to about 88 miles, which will be the longest interstate highway beltway in America at that point. Why is your hand up?
There's an SR-77 shield in the southeast. Giving me agita.
That's 77H.
Thank you.
Is it
The H is missing.
I thought I knew it had to be the H, right? So 240, if we start where the mouse is right here, and we work clockwise, right? So it'll overtake the 152 freeway. It'll overtake the length of the Kilpatrick Turnpike. It'll overtake a part of the Turner Turnpike. It'll overtake all of the Kickapoo Turnpike, and it'll overtake an existing part of I-40 to complete the loop. As Anthony said, this is now just a matter of it being signed, right?
Yeah.
So it's been
and
approved.
It isn't yet, but
no, it's not.
They'll get around to it.
Yeah, so that's something for you to look forward to. Yay!
Yay!
Which also makes me wonder about the fate of the old oval 152 shields at the interchange by the airport that are still there.
Ooh. Yeah, well, they'll have to replace those, right? And it's not just 152 anymore.
They didn't bother changing them out to meat cleavers, but they're probably going to have to, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Leftovers.
we've come to the I-235 portion of tonight's program. 235 is another neat drive, by the way. If I wasn't so enamored with I-44, I would like this one too, perhaps more so. 235 is north to south. It connects the crossroads of America, the interchange with I-35 and 40 at the southeast corner of downtown. With I-44 at its north end, the freeway does continue north of there, but we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. This section of it, the Interstate Standards section of it, is also known as the Centennial Expressway because it was actually completed and it had a formal opening ceremony on the day, April 22nd, 1989, 100 years after the initial land run of 1889. So that's how it gets its name. It passes very close to the east edge of the downtown district, and also it passes right by the west side of the Capitol complex near downtown, and also the University of Oklahoma Medical Center. There's a lot more that we could say about how this highway came to be. I think the thing to focus on here is that the southernmost section of it, so the area near Bricktown and, say, near the Capitol, was built at quite a hefty price, mainly in the way of the demolition of historic neighborhoods. And I think Laura is back to tell us a little bit about what happened to the neighborhoods that were formerly known as Harrison Walnut and Deep Deuce.
Yeah, so just to give some context, so Deep Deuce was centered along the deep incline along Northeast 2nd, or Northeast 2. I don't know how are the routes called in
You can call it
City?
Northeast 2nd Street, that's fine.
Okay, Northeast 2nd Street. And then, so that's the neighborhood that Deep Deuce was. And then Harrison Walnut is just above it. So, think like 6th, Northeast 6th, up in that area. So, a few blocks north. But anyway, Northeast 2nd was Deep Deuce, which was the neighborhood that saw its heyday in between the 1920s and 1960s. It was the African American neighborhood of like Oklahoma City, and was like where a lot of beginning of the civil rights movement in Oklahoma City was in Deep Deuce. It's where you had all sorts of so like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached there. My notes just scrolled. I don't know what happened to them. I had a whole bunch of stuff about what was there. Sorry, I just lost my notes.
Right. Well, and to people who know how these things work, it should be no surprise that a freeway was built through a historically black neighborhood. That happens all the time.
It does. This one was kind of late. Most of these that were built in historically African American neighborhoods happened earlier. Because this one wasn't finished until 1989. It wasn't until the 1980s. In fact, it was an article that I was looking at Harrison Walnut that was from 1982. That was basically talking about really talking about the awfulness of how some houses have been bought out and were abandoned but not yet demolished, while other people were still living there, waiting for the state to buy them out, but worried that their value of their house was going to go down because there were arsons and the buildings were falling down. So it's kind of late for an African American neighborhood. So that's what's kind of interesting to me, that it's like, this is later than most of them. But yeah, so think of it as basically, I'm trying not to freak out because I'm like, my notes. Anyway,
Yeah.
so sorry, I'm like stuttering here. So yes, so those neighborhoods, and so when you think about history and you think about the fact that African Americans were restricted to where they could live, and that there was a lot of history, in these areas. That's where like the center of African American culture was. But interestingly, some of that culture had already started to disperse.
Did we lose Laura?
But
No,
it's
we
still a
didn't.
huge.
I thought we lost you for a second.
What?
I thought we lost you for a second.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Can you hear
I
me?
hear you right now, yeah.
Okay. But what's really so yes, but it's still the fact that there was a lot of history that happened there that was lost, if for no other reason than the fact that the Oklahoma Historical Society documented zero African American history prior to the 1960s, and the first permanent exhibit on the state's Black history was not established until the new museum at Northeast 23rd and Lincoln opened in 2005. So losing this history in the 1980s was a really big deal because a lot of it wasn't documented, and the fact that it happened late. It was really, in doing my research, I really didn't talk a lot about anything that happened along I-40 and the Crosstown Expressway. I couldn't find anything about the neighborhoods that were lost there, but I really did find a lot about Deep Deuce and Harrison Walnut and I-235. That's like the big one.
Yeah, a lot of stuff done early was just done. There was really no write-up about it. So it makes sense that it's after the 60s that you would hear about it at least.
I mean, sort of, yeah. A lot of it, really, from the 1960s onward. But I just didn't find a whole lot in general about the neighborhoods that the Crosstown Expressway took out, that in the area where the boulevard is now.
Understood.
Yeah, so it came at a price, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you would agree with that.
it did.
Yep.
It's really interesting because a little bit further north, it was kind of a mess when. Well, you're probably about to talk about this with the Broadway extension.
No, you can bring it up now if you want.
Yeah, sure. So just north of Harrison Walnut, you have Edgemere Park, and no, why don't you talk about it, and then I'll just add your notes in my notes after.
Well, you want to... All right, well, we'll come back to you in a second, then.
Okay.
This bridge you're looking at is pretty significant to the history of this freeway also. This is the BNSF freight rail bridge that crosses over the interstate near its northern terminus at I-44. This is the new bridge that was built in 2018. It was built as part of the widening of the interstate to 3 lanes per direction in a widening project that was completed that year. The original bridge was much smaller than this, and it constrained the pre-existing interstate to 4 lanes total. So the bridge had to be replaced, and it's difficult to replace a bridge of this size over a major interstate in an urban area. So I started to look around at some... So I started to look at some, examples of the stuff that was done with this particular project. And there's some really interesting stuff that I'd like to make you aware of. This bridge is 558 feet long. It obviously crosses the full width of the I-235 main line. The truss structure itself is 47 feet tall. Each span is 275 feet long. Each span is 3.8 million pounds of weathering steel, and the bridge itself cost $17 million to assemble. Now, with a bridge like this, it's very difficult to build it with a truss bridge like this. It's very difficult to build this over live traffic. So what they had to do was actually pre-assemble each span at a yard nearby, and then use what are known as self-propelled modular transports. So they built this thing. They built each span off-site, and then they hooked up these transports that are somewhat automated or / remote controlled or so. And it's basically a set of tires on a flatbed that you can therefore attach any kind of load onto from above. And they are wheeled into position. Obviously, this kind of operation takes quite a while to execute. It takes, I believe they had 2 different full weekend closures to pull this off, one for each span. But you see the new spans going in these pictures here. And, the engineers who planned this certainly knew what they were doing, because it went off very relatively easily, or about as easily as you could hope for. Yes, sir.
As someone who works closely with building structures for live railroads over highways, I am a highway engineer, not a structural engineer, but I work directly with the railroads on this, and so I know firsthand, when you have a live railroad, you have very limited outages, and generally you can only repeat them a very limited number of times to accomplish work like this. The entire time that you're building a new bridge or replacing an existing one, you have to have some sort of maintenance of railroad traffic for a through track. Even if it's a spur track, if there's anything live about that track, it must be maintained pretty much every week. You get at most a weekend closure. And if it's a mainline track, good luck even getting that much. You might get 1 total. So anything you do to stage a bridge like this, first and foremost, you must be maintaining existing traffic to the maximum extent feasible. You can close your track briefly to maybe put in a temporary alignment. You're basically just doing the tie-ins. Everything else should be done offline. And because in these photos I don't see the existing bridge, I assume there's some bridge, whether it's the original bridge or a temporary one, just out of sight, because you don't have months to put this bridge together in sight. You have hours of track outage during which you can do critical activities. Everything else, the track is active while you're doing this.
Yeah, I think that there were upwards of 50 trains a day
Yeah.
on this line. And
Very
again,
limited
like we were saying, Oklahoma City is a major crossroads in the national railroad grid also. So, for a bridge like this, it's a big deal when you have to replace something like this. And oftentimes, these bridges are replaced on a fast-tracked basis. And one of the ways that you can do that for a bridge this big is to just simply pre-assemble the thing just off-site and then just drag it into place over the course of a weekend. And that's what they did in this case here. Very interesting engineering behind this.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also interesting from the perspective of you don't see new truss bridges built very often anymore, because the amount of steel and material required is larger than many of the alternatives that you can use now, so that increases the cost. But
this is one where you need it.
Right. In this case, you can kind of see why they did, is because, if to not build this as a truss, you would, especially to support trains, which are a lot heavier than vehicles. A diesel locomotive weighs 10 times as much as a fully loaded truck. You would have needed some very deep beams to not build a truss, and you just did not have that clearance available with the freeway underneath.
Yeah, to raise the railroad would take miles to get it up several feet. Railroad grades are very shallow, and that would be a huge expense and headache to deal with. So
So truss it is.
Yes.
Through truss at that.
I am happy to answer further questions at alpsroads.net.
Send him an email. He would love to hear from you.
That is fine.
Yeah, so that was actually, I had passed under this bridge when I was there, and I was like, you know what, that looks really interesting. I should probably look into more of the backstory behind this, and I'm glad that I did. So there's that. We teased the Broadway extensions, so we talked about I-235, and then the Broadway extension is sort of the northern continuation of that along US 77 up to the suburb of Edmond. It's part of the same highway that 235 is, it just has a different designation. There's another, so the interchange rebuild here kind of ties into what we were just talking about with the 235 bridge, the railroad bridge replacement, and this was the project known as Off Broadway. Kind of a similar scope to what we are seeing now with the 240-35 rebuild south of town. This project was completed in 2022. It involved the widening of the 235 and Broadway extension main lines to 6 lanes. Also introduced flyovers into the mix for the first time because, again, this was another one of those antiquated cloverleaf interchanges. It really helped open things up more. It gave more lanes for through traffic. It gave much more favorable geometry to ramp traffic, and has been a pretty big success since it came online this past year.
At the expense of what looks like an older interchange there.
Well, there was a cloverleaf there before.
And then just to the left.
Some of it was rebuilt in place. The flyovers and new retaining walls and all that stuff represent a greater expansion of the interchange outward from its center. But yeah, they pretty much were able to do this. Most of it within the existing footprint of the interchange because of the flyovers that were introduced. And the widening of the 235 and the BNSF railroad bridge replacement were sort of the precursor to that because those were built to support this new interchange project that came afterwards. The Off-Broadway project, as I said, was completed in 2022. It was, I believe it was at the time the largest single contract in Oklahoma DOT history at $105 million total.
Yeah.
Laura, you're still here, right?
I am still here.
Would you like to talk more about the Broadway extension?
Sure.
Okay.
So, long story short, basically with post-World War II suburbanization, people were moving further out, and they were moving out, further, uptown Oklahoma City, but also up to as far to Edmond. And so the Broadway extension was basically, a re-engineered US 77 from Northwest 36th Street on up. But when it was first built at the southern end at Northwest 36th, it used to just dump directly onto a 3-lane Robinson Avenue and through the historic Edgemere neighborhood, which was not good.
Better than what they did at the southern end of the Kansas Turnpike originally.
Oh, jeez.
For those of you who don't know, the southern end of the Kansas Turnpike used to end right at the state line, and it ended at a T intersection.
At a T intersection with the county road that ran across the state line. And
the cornfield after.
And so
and it wasn't signed very well.
Right, there were incidents with vehicles overshooting the end of the road and ending up in the cornfield.
Yeah. Oh God!
And so they ended up having to actually close the turnpike south of the southernmost interchange for a bit until some of Oklahoma's I-35 was built to meet it.
Because again, remember that the original idea was that Oklahoma was going to build a turnpike there to connect Oklahoma City with the southern end of the Kansas Turnpike. And then eventually I-35 became the thing, but in the meantime there was a period where the Kansas Turnpike essentially ended at a dead end at the state line there. So that's what we're alluding to. But
yeah, I have never seen any ground level photos of this, but an aerial photo of it does exist out there on the internet.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that same photo. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Laura. Go ahead.
No worries. But yeah, so Edgemere Park residents, took it up with the Oklahoma DOT, took them to court and convinced them to help, mitigate this mess out of their neighborhood. And fortunately, once they built the I-235, then it was, shifted out of their neighborhood. But, they still, had to get the state highway to pay to remove the worst of blighted apartment buildings and build a wall and tall landscaping berm. And Edgemere Park is now a thriving historic neighborhood thanks to these battles waged by the residents. Very different fate than the historically African-American neighborhoods further to the south.
Very interesting how that works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, when I drove this, it was quite clear that Edmond was quite the booming suburb. And I think it was one of the larger ones to surface from the post-World War II era initially. I mean, now we think of Norman and Moore as pretty big ones as well. But and that's thanks in large part to OU also. But yeah, so it totally makes sense that there should be a 6-lane freeway going all the way up this way. Yeah. Lake Hefner Parkway, real quick, as we get into some other stuff here. Lake Hefner, I'll talk to you for a second about this. It is a drinking water reservoir for Oklahoma City. It was created in 1943 under the labor of German World War II prisoners of war. It is named in honor of Robert A. Hefner, who served as the mayor of Oklahoma City from 1939 to 47. But it was originally called the Bluff Creek Reservoir because of the tributary that largely fed it. Nowadays, Lake Hefner is a major recreational destination in the Oklahoma City area. There's over 9 miles of multi-use trails, bicycle, roller skating, pedestrian, and you will oftentimes see sailboats, all sorts of recreational craft out on the water at all times of year. The parkway itself is pretty nondescript. It was built out as a freeway by the early 1990s. A recent extension in 2016 saw it extended northward beyond the Kilpatrick Turnpike. There's not a whole lot to see along here, but if you're coming northbound on the parkway and you approach Lake Hefner from that direction, from the south, you actually get a pretty nice view. And so that itself is worth the price of admission. I think
that freeway does come to a little bit of an unceremonious end.
Yes, it does.
There's a traffic light, and then it's just an expressway.
Yeah. And there's a gas station right at that traffic light that I stopped at to get gas. So there you go. So that's how I remember it. 152, future I-240 corridor, apparently. I don't know. I guess that the interchanges here are interstate standard. I don't know that they are, but especially around the airport, I would think that if they were going to sign this as 240, they need to do something about the interchange geometry around the airport there. But nevertheless, it exists as a state highway right now. It is signed as Airport Road on signs. It is also the major highway that directly connects to Oklahoma's largest civilian airport, which is Will Rogers World Airport, which Anthony and I have had recent experience at. I didn't fly in and out of Will Rogers, but I have dealt with Avis Railcar from Anthony has.
Right.
This airport is named in honor of Oklahoma's favorite son, Will Rogers, who was an American vaudeville performer, actor, and social commentator. He was born as a citizen of the Cherokee Nation in what was then part of Indian Territory in 1879. He lived in a ranch outside of Tulsa on the north side of town, and it's actually still, open to the public. You can go and visit it.
That's also why you have the Will Rogers Turnpike.
That's another perk. Yep.
The same person.
Yep. Will Rogers has a lot of things named for him in Oklahoma. Have you noticed that? It's funny how that works. But yeah, he was a hugely popular nationally for his leading political wit and was the highest paid Hollywood film star in the 1930s. He died rather prematurely in 1935 in a plane crash in Alaska. But he is still remembered, he's still something of a legendary figure even today in Oklahoma. And so the airport in Oklahoma City is named for him.
Yep, he made 71 films, 50 silent films,
71.
and 21. 71.
Jesus.
50, I know, isn't that crazy?
We're coming up on doing 71 webinars. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And I have no goddamn life, so I can't imagine that he had one either.
Well, he got paid to do it.
He got paid to do his.
This guy gets paid.
Yeah.
But yes, 50 of those were silent films, and 21 of them were talkies.
One of these days, I'm gonna do a Tulsa webinar, and I'm gonna show you some more Will Rogers
So
stuff.
21
from
of these
area.
were boomers, which means the other 50 were Sooners.
Okay, boomer.
I'm booming.
Now we get to the Oklahoma Turnpike section of the
US
program.
66.
Yeah, a bypass of US 66. This
I know.
road is.
That's why I haven't driven it.
Have you not been on this one?
Nope, I drove 66.
Okay.
He doesn't like paying tolls, remember?
That's
Well, I
also
understand that, but it is part of the interstate system, so I thought he would have ended up on it once by accident, but no?
Nope,
Okay.
never paid in Oklahoma.
Well, to tell the story of the Oklahoma Turnpike system probably would take its own presentation, but for the effort, for the sake of trying to be as concise as possible, I'll tell you that the story really begins with the Turner Turnpike in 1953, which was the first of the turnpikes in the Oklahoma system to enter operation. It connects Oklahoma City with Tulsa. That was the idea, was to connect the two biggest cities in the state with the first one.
A logical place to start.
Yeah, and there have been several other turnpikes that have been built. There was one that was opened even relatively recently, within the last month, in the Tulsa area, but that'll be the subject of another conversation some other time. The Turner Turnpike was completed in 1953. It's named for Roy Turner, who was the 13th governor of Oklahoma from 1947 to 1951. Turner oversaw the state of Oklahoma during a very transformative time in the state's history. He oversaw the overhaul of the state highway department, the state planning and resources board. He helped establish the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority in 1950. He was also a big player in the desegregation of higher education in the state of Oklahoma in the early 1950s. Now, I know that this is something that probably deserves its own webinar too, and that is we haven't done something toll roads talk related lately. But I know that you guys love toll collection systems. And there was a very interesting toll collection system in place on the Turner Turnpike and also on the Will Rogers Turnpike. And we'll try to outline it for you here. So normally when you enter a toll road, you kind of you give whatever money you're owed, and then that's the end of it. However, there are certain situations on this road where that's not necessarily true. So let's say you start out from Oklahoma City and you're heading towards Tulsa. If you're traveling the whole way between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, you pass through the mainline plaza at Stroud, and you pay a flat toll, and that's the end of it. If you exit prior to this mainline plaza, you pay a flat toll, an intermediate rate of some sort, and that's the end of it. Now let's say you're exiting after Stroud, but before you reach Tulsa. What happens then? So you go through Stroud, you pay a flat toll, which is meant to represent the toll to drive the entire length of the road, and then you exit at an intermediate interchange after that, so you haven't really driven the whole road at that point. Well, you present a receipt on your exit, and you are refunded the difference between the two. Did I outline that correctly?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
how it works. And,
Okay. Yeah.
Well, what also makes this interesting is that there are a couple of interchanges along here where the configuration of the interchange is such that both directions of the highway actually, the ramps merge and you pass through the same toll plaza. And so when you pull up to the toll plaza, the toll taker will actually ask you, did you come from Tulsa or did you come from Oklahoma City? Because what they have to do with you differs depending on which direction you came from.
That's right. See, it's more work for the toll takers.
Now if you have a pike pass, you don't experience this. But
yeah, I didn't.
But
yeah.
no, I have never used a pike pass. Every toll I've ever paid in Oklahoma, I've paid cash, whether it was in my own car or in a rental car. So I've been asked this by a toll taker getting off of the turnpike.
See, this is why I have you on the show, because I'm a lazy bastard and I just use toll tags everywhere I go. So I don't get to experience this kind of stuff that you do.
Yeah, no, well, you remember that trip that I mentioned where I clinched the Kickapoo Turnpike shortly after the southern section of it opened? I clinched a lot of the Oklahoma Turnpike system on that trip, and I burned through a lot of quarters because a lot of Well, because a lot of the turnpikes, they don't actually take cash. They just have change baskets.
Yes, they do.
And in some cases, they have like a bill changing machine shortly before, if you like don't have exact change. But otherwise, it's like it gets kind of freaky too, because there are cases where like you need exact change and you're not really well warned of this before you get there, so if you don't know, you could have a problem.
It's a real pain in the ass if you're coming down the Indian Nation Turnpike in the middle of goddamn nowhere.
That's
and you don't
the one I haven't clinched.
That's the one you haven't done.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, it's a pain in the ass to be in the middle of nowhere and not have exact change for that one. However, all this conversation is moot, ultimately, because in the next couple of years, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is converting the entire system to cashless tolling. So ultimately, these fun little quirks in the system will be going away.
All fun things are modernized away eventually, aren't they?
That's right. In fact, one of the most recent additions to the cashless tolling empire is the Bailey Turnpike. When I drove it in September, it was fully cashless. Although all the toll plazas and all the old infrastructure was still up, they were forcing you down the Pike Pass ramps at that point.
I remember I was going to clinch 44 up a ways and then realized it was a toll road, so I haven't driven this part either.
See, yeah, so you're missing quite a bit of it then.
I'm
Okay.
missing it in Oklahoma.
Okay, well that's pretty much.
So with the H.E. Bailey Turnpike, this is one that I clinched in my own car in 2015, and my then girlfriend, now wife, was with me. And
I'm sorry.
And the one thing I remember about this is us pulling up to the last toll plaza south of Lawton, and pulling into the change basket area and throwing coins in the basket. And my wife, I guess, is not a road geek and doesn't pay attention to things growing up. She had never had the experience before of seeing someone throw coins in a basket to pay a toll, and so she was like, "Wait, what?" Wow. I was like, "Yeah, no, I'll show you. Look."
Wow, that's a thing from New Jersey.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Well, that's one of my earliest memories, too, is throwing coins in the basket on the parkway going down the shore. Yeah.
You throw a couple extra, and if it still doesn't take you, you go anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the Bailey Turnpike came to be on the heels of the huge success that the Turner Turnpike was, and then also the Will Rogers Turnpike, which is the turnpike that connects Tulsa with southwestern Missouri on the other side of Tulsa. So the OTA was looking to expand, and they easily looked into building a road to connect originally Oklahoma City with Lawton. However, then during the genesis of the plans for this road, North Texas sort of got wind of what was up, and they were like, hey, Wichita Falls would like to have some sort of connection to all of this. So ultimately it was extended all the way down to the Red River. It was not part of the interstate system originally, as I mentioned. Neither was the Turner Turnpike. That came later as well. But this was not signed as part of I-44 until 1982 in the aforementioned renumbering of Oklahoma interstates. This is one of the more quiet turnpikes on the system, I would say. The Indian Nation is just god-awful. But the Bailey is right up there as well.
Well, the Indian Nation is at least actually a freeway. There's one that isn't.
There's one that isn't. Are you talking about the one that's a Super 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know which one you're talking about.
And that one has some at-grade intersections, too.
It does?
Yes. Yeah. With shields,
that's the one I haven't driven.
With shields at the at-grade intersection saying, it's one of the Indian tribes that names begin with a C.
Chickasaw.
That one, yeah. Where actually the sign says Chickasaw Turnpike, junction, and then it's got arrows pointing left and right. You can turn. It's
this
the
is
funkiest thing.
Florida has this.
See, I haven't. That's the one I haven't driven.
Florida has the exact same thing.
Okay. Well, I haven't driven the Gilcrease Turnpike either.
These are the two.
That's the new one that opened up.
Two same states. They both have panhandles. They both toll way too many roads.
Yes, that's true. I have not driven the new section. I have driven what existed in March of 2021 for that one.
Which one?
The Gilcrease.
Well, yeah. I mean, the new piece that opened is the toll road. The old Gilcrease Expressway is
not the turnpike around Tulsa. That's right. It's named something else.
Okay.
Well,
that's not today.
That's another webinar for another day. Yeah. So the Bailey Turnpike was built in the 1960s. It was named in honor of Henry E. Bailey, who served as a state highway commissioner in Oklahoma in 1939 through 1941, upon which he assumed the office of the mayor of Oklahoma City in 1941, and he held that position until 1944. He got tired of that job, and so he went on to become the chief engineer of the Oklahoma Highway Department in 1944, and then served as director of the State Highway Department starting in 1947. He became the general manager of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority in 1951 and was one of the prime figures overseeing the construction of the Turner Turnpike. So this new turnpike stretching southwesterly from Oklahoma City was named for him. As you can see here, that this is how Oklahoma Turnpike does their cashless tolling setup here. You see the signs here at what was formerly a mainline plaza with express pike pass lanes.
And under the green awnings to the side is what were the cash lanes.
Right, yep. Yeah, generally not a very interesting drive, I have to say. Especially, and this road will forever irritate me because it's at the end of this highway where I got my flat tire.
That and the speed limit through Lawton is stupidly low.
Yeah, so there is a free section of the Bailey that runs, around Lawton, and I think isn't it down to like 55 or 60 miles an hour or something like that?
Try 45.
What?
Is it that low?
Yeah.
I don't remember it being that
Oh
low.
yeah, and when I drove through there in 2015,
Yeah,
there was at least one cop sitting there.
I know.
There was.
I remember it being absurdly low. I don't remember it being that low. But yeah.
Minneapolis, okay.
Yeah, so the section of 44th around Lawton was built as a separate expressway that was then just, shoved into the two ends of the Bailey Turnpike, and then it was one like very stupid, cumbersome hole. You see something like this also around the city of Muskogee, where the Muskogee Turnpike ends, and then there's a free section, and then there's another toll section beyond that. But that's another story for another time.
New York Thruway.
Well, that's at least there they actually go out of their way to tell you that it's the same highway. You don't always get that with these examples in Oklahoma. Continuing our look at turnpikes really quick, the Kilpatrick Turnpike. Built in the 1990s primarily. It's named for John Kilpatrick, who was an Oklahoma Turnpike Authority chairman in the 1980s, who really spearheaded this project to build a northern and western bypass of the Oklahoma City Metro as part of the turnpike system. The southern extension, aka the section south of I-40, is the newest section, and that was built in 2020. The Kilpatrick was actually the first turnpike in Oklahoma to go over to cashless tolling, and that was done in 2021. It was not the Kickapoo Turnpike. It was the Kilpatrick that was first. And that was executed about 18 months ago.
No, we didn't have a few words about the Norman Spur.
Ooh.
Would you like to talk about the Bailey Spur to Norman?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
So this was mentioned a few slides back, and just worth noting real quick. So there is a spur off the H.E. Bailey Turnpike that heads towards Norman. It has been unofficially designated by some road geeks as the Norman Spur, quote unquote. It is not officially called that. It is the H.E. Bailey Turnpike Spur. Until fairly recently, it did not have a designated number, but it is now. And you can see there was a photo on that slide of an Oklahoma Route 4 shield that was a little bit shoehorned onto that sign as an afterthought. That's because Route 4, which formerly had its southern end at that interchange, was just extended to cover the designation for the Turnpike Spur. Okay.
Yeah, so the Bailey Spur exists, and I think Anthony has summed it up very well, so I don't think I have to say anything else about it. And I think I've pretty much told you all about the Kilpatrick that you need to know as well. See that? We're rolling right along, folks. This show is a well-oiled machine, I have to tell you. And finally, in the turnpike section, we have the Kickapoo, which, as we've talked about already, is the newest turnpike in the Oklahoma City metro area, completed in 2021.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's basically a north-south connector between the Turner Turnpike and I-40 east of town. Apparently, it's future I-240 as well,
Yep.
so whatever. It is. I know it's got a really funny name, and I know that some of you people in the road enthusiast community are, you have, very shallow minds, and you're only 8 years old mentally.
And you think it's
but
cool.
You think it's cool, yeah, I know, poo, ha ha ha, I know, it's hilarious. But as you saw on the slide at the beginning of the show, there is indeed a Kickapoo Nation. That is see, you embody a lot of road enthusiasm.
Right. Well, and all right, it's worth noting that the name of this tribe of people that existed in North America long before anyone from Europe arrived is not in English, and so it wasn't funny to them in their native language.
Of course
not.
No,
kicking poo is a ritual to them.
There's a quirk with the exit numbers on the Kickapoo Turnpike.
Yeah, there sure is. Yeah.
Yeah, well, right. They're numbered in the low hundreds, and the deal there is that the exit number for the northern end of it matches the exit number off of I-44, the Turner Turnpike there, and they just decided that they were going to make it so that if you were driving west, on the Turner Turnpike and exited to the Kickapoo, you would see the exit numbers just continuously go downward as if you hadn't changed roads. That's how they did it for whatever reason.
Isn't that kind of like what Arizona does at times?
Sort of, yes. Arizona.
It's kind of derived from the same concept, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is going to go away with 240, right?
Presumably, they would give it exit numbers for I-240 at that point. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I am obliged to tell you about an idea that's come up recently following the completion of the Kickapoo that exists right now. There is some preliminary discussion about a southern extension to meet I-35 in the area of Purcell. This extension is in the early stages of planning. It's not, if it does happen, it's not going to happen for quite a while still. However, I should mention that even though there isn't a slide dedicated to it, the original concept behind the Chickasaw Turnpike was that it would connect I-35 with I-40, bypassing Oklahoma City, and the stub of the Chickasaw that exists today is the only built-out remnant of that proposal. This would be basically reviving that idea of connecting 35 and 40 east of Oklahoma City with a turnpike.
Less ridiculously, because it'd be done closer in.
Yeah, so that... Whether this iteration of that takes off or not, I think remains to be seen, but that is sort of the latest proposal that's floating around there right now. So stay tuned on that.
And then you can sweep it west into the Bailey Spur.
Sure. Couple of bridges I want to tell you about really quick. This handsome-looking truss bridge is the Lake Overholser Bridge. It is part of the historic alignment of US 66, northwest of Oklahoma City. It was built in 1924. It was closed to traffic originally in 2008, but it was reopened in 2011 after refurbishment. And it is still drivable today. It's not just, one of these pedestrian bridges. It carries a roadway on it, so you can drive across it. It crosses the North Canadian River at the north end of Lake Overholser, west of town. I have not actually read The Grapes of Wrath, but I've heard that this bridge is mentioned in it.
So, true story, The Grapes of Wrath is like my favorite book ever.
Is it really?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm right now scrambling to try and find where exactly it's mentioned in my Kindle copy, because it's been a while since I've read it, and I was like, oh my god, why didn't I look this up before, right now?
Is this west or east of El Reno?
I don't even know where El Reno is.
Well, there's Lake Overholser. Okay, so it's on Oklahoma 66.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Well, and part of the whole Dust Bowl era story that's told in that book, right, is
There we go.
the whole Okies go home. Well, why were they Okies? Well, because they were from Oklahoma.
This is a quote from my website. Oklahoma 66 is old US 66, but not when it bypasses the cool truss bridge. So, whoops, I didn't get off and look at it the way you did, so good job. I was too young and stupid back then.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
I think you can see some of the supports for the new bridge in the background there.
Yeah, the existing OK 66 is right next door. Yeah. But yeah, this is still here, and it's almost 100 years old, but it's still going strong.
Overholser Drive, around the lake.
All right, now I told you I would revisit Scissortail Park before the end of tonight's show. Mm-hmm. At the time that Scissortail Park was originally being developed, and the Core to Shore project was starting to take hold, they fortunately, urban planners recognized, hey, we're going to have to figure out a way to build some sort of connection between the downtown side of Scissortail Park and the Oklahoma River side of the park. Preferably a pedestrian bridge. That would be nice. So they came up with this. The Skydance Bridge was built in 2012 as part of the I-40 Crosstown project. Its appearance is the result of a design competition that was won by architects Hans and Tori Butzer. They conceived of this bridge, the inspiration of it being the mating dance of the scissor-tailed flycatcher, which is the Oklahoma state bird. So it's kind of an interesting example of a bridge mixed in with a public art display.
I'm going to say it's almost 400 feet long.
It's
with the railroad there.
Well, I mean, it's if you include it from end to end, yeah. The centerpiece of it, obviously, is the sculpture that helps also support the structure.
These are daytime photos. Nighttime, that thing is lit up.
It is lit up
in red.
It's lit.
Yeah,
it's nice.
It actually looks pretty cool at night.
It is, yeah. And many people consider this bridge to be Oklahoma City's signature bridge. It's very pretty. They did a great job with it. Originally, when they awarded the winner of this competition, this bridge was originally a cable stayed bridge. There were going to be cables protruding off of these pylons of the sculpture. However, the estimates for the construction came in, and they were like, "Holy crap, this is way too expensive."
Good on them.
Long story short,
good on them for not building another meme bridge.
Yeah, so they scaled it back a little bit, but they retained the original intent.
Oh, it's much nicer than any cable-stayed bridge.
The front door is right there, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make that clear.
I just wanted to kick a poop.
Okay. So the Skydance Bridge is here, then you can check it out if you're ever in town and are visiting Scissortail Park. And you get this nice view of the new I-40 across town.
I remember seeing that bridge when I was driving 40.
Well, there you go. It's not bad, right?
Oh, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Very, very eye-catching. I was heading east, so I think that goes right under it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very, very eye-catching from a distance. Yeah, absolutely.
They did a nice job with it. And I think you guys have done a nice job with this webinar. And I thank you all very much for watching.
Woo!
Or contributing. Or whatever the hell it was that you were doing the last couple hours.
All right, who's looking at the chat? Anyone have questions?
We'll be here to take your questions if you have any. I know that we kind of...
Sure.
Eric said that that according to his wife, the bridge is mentioned towards the beginning of the book. And yes, I'm looking for it. I'm not having any good luck by searching for anything that will help me find it.
Laura is not going to sign off tonight until she finds the reference to that bridge in the book.
I'm just gonna be reading the book until next Saturday.
She might have to report back to us at this rate.
But I just want to say I love the Skydance Bridge.
It's not bad, right?
I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think that it's
remarkable. As I said, I drove old 40 years ago, and then so I came back and I got to drive new 40, and that was the highlight of hundreds of miles of driving. Was that bridge in particular compared to anything
That's not
else,
surprising for some reason.
Compared to anything basically from Albuquerque into Little Rock along 40.
God.
That's number
Jesus.
one. I mean, what?
And I have my eyes on driving
Cadillac
that at
Ranch,
some point too. Yeah.
No, but on I-40 itself.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
What am I missing?
I'm just saying I've singled that out for a stretch that I plan to drive at some point.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you're going to find better than that bridge, honestly.
Oh boy.
Between those points.
Jeez. Yeah. I still got to drive 70 across eastern Colorado. That's going to be a beaut.
That's nice.
From what I've heard.
No, it's fine.
Oh, hey, look, another webinar next Saturday. Come and join us for that one. That'll be fun.
Oh, hey.
Yay!
We get to hear people really get angry
What was
on
that?
one.
What was that about? Replace and relocate?
Yeah, so the theme of the first 3 weeks of these shows, the 3 R's, right? Replace, relocate,
That was
and
today.
remove was the third one, right? Yeah, so we still have to talk about the remove option. We'll talk about that. That'll be the focus of next week.
And there'll be some element of relocate that should be talked about as well with that.
Well, I know that Doug is going to be here next Saturday, and he's very polite, but I'm going to ask that he use a few curse words just so I can hear him say a few curse words.
Yeah.
Because that guy never gets angry. Have you noticed that? Like, he's just very, level-headed. He's like, okay.
He can get angry.
If the Islanders lose tonight, like 11-0, he'd be like, okay, whatever. I would like to see him get angry once.
Oh, I've seen him get angry.
Have you?
Well, angry.
No, but I mean, like, legitimately, like kicking tables over and like throwing shit angry.
No, that's the Bills, not the Islanders.
But I'm sorry, wrong sport. Okay. But you know what I mean, right? Like, he doesn't get angry, right? Am I crazy? Like, am I making that up, or have I just not been around him at the right time? And watch, I'm talking all this stuff about him, and he's probably like watching in the chat right now. He's like, hey, Roadway Whiz, you're a dick.
Video.
We can watch a couple of videos. We kind of went a little bit long with the PowerPoint, but what hasn't already appeared on YouTube will appear on YouTube in the next couple of months. So, I think the 235 stuff is already up, and I think the I-35 stuff is already online. I'm not sure that anything else is at this point.
So for context here, this was just coming up 35, but 35 exit to the right, the old 40 for Oklahoma City Boulevard exit to the left. You come around this curve, you're going to have the exit for current 40, and 235 is straight ahead.
Yeah, and this is not a bad view of downtown either, from this vantage point. So that's downtown on your left. I don't think you can see it in this video, but the OU Medical Center is on your right, as is the state capitol in a little bit.
The state capitol a little bit further up. The state capitol is interesting also too, because it's on Old 66, and there's actually an interchange there and like an old underpass too.
Yeah,
so they actually other than freeways, built some quasi modern roadway stuff there.
I think they also openly brag about the Oklahoma Capitol being the only one in the United States with an active oil well on the premises.
That's right.
Well, right, yeah. They talk about the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma is also home to Cushing, which is not that big of a town, but the big deal is that if you go to Cushing, just south of town, there is a huge array of giant steel tanks, and that's because several pipelines intersect there. So it's a hub for the distribution of oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who works in the energy industry, I find these things fascinating.
Yes, you do. And I have heard you, whether in person or in chat somewhere, talk about your travels across this general part of the country and bring home lots of interesting accounts of different things.
Yeah, so when I was in Oklahoma, I also deliberately went to Cushing because I had to go check it out.
Of course you did, yeah. Hey, Laura, is Rainey asleep at this point, or
no? So Mike took her to Winter Wonderland.
All right, so you'll never see them again. All right, that's fine.
No, they'll be home eventually.
They're looking at Christmas lights.
Yes, and the train garden, which apparently I recently found out that train gardens are very much like a Maryland thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've never.
What is this? A garden with model trains in it?
Yes! It's basically like...
It is that simple.
Yes, so I'm gonna have to take you all, whoever's coming New Year's Eve to my house to do the episode, we're gonna have to go hit up some train gardens, whichever ones are like still up by then.
All right, I like trains enough that I'm interested. Yes, okay.
Yes, but it's a Maryland tradition that lots of like fire halls and churches and community centers and stuff, and awesome towns like the town of Bel Air set up a model train garden at Christmas time.
Yes. So show me the choo-choos.
Yes. Yes, you can see all the choo-choos in lots of different gauges, and some towns go like painstakingly to try and recreate like the businesses and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
By the way, here comes the BNSF bridge that we talked about quite a bit. I don't know. As a bridge enthusiast and engineer, that's probably my favorite part of the whole highway. So there you go.
Right.
And here's the
It's also very visibly newer because of how beefy it is. You'll notice older truss bridges tend not to be built with big solid beams like that. Often, actually, the members within them are themselves mini trusses with a bunch of X crossing in the middle, holding the ends together. They didn't want to use more material than they had to, and also back in the early 20th century, the market reality of the time was that labor was relatively cheaper than it is now. So there was more return to using more labor to do a lot more work to assemble things like that in order to use less material. That now you feel like, just make it a beam.
Yeah.
Too much work to put it together otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. But now, so we've passed I-44, and now we're on the Broadway extension, which is US 77. Again, as I said before, it's basically the same road. It's just now we've changed designations.
Wilshire Boulevard. No, you're not in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that threw me for a loop, too, for a second. I thought I might have teleported a couple of time zones there, but nope, unfortunately. Nope, still in Bland, Oklahoma. Laura is graciously allowing us losers into her house on New Year's Eve for the second year in a row to do a live show.
I'm so excited about it. And you guys aren't losers.
Yeah, we're road enthusiasts. That makes us losers.
We're people who enjoy self-deprecating humor, okay?
Yeah, Laura, you've been hanging out with me for a while. You still haven't figured this out?
No, I have figured it out.
Oh, okay. All right.
I've been hanging out with some of y'all for, it'll be coming up on 13 years.
Oh my god. Why do you gotta make us feel so goddamn old?
I don't have to do that. My kid just makes me feel old.
Well, she's gonna contribute to that for sure, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because next year is gonna be 13 years since the first Baltimore meet.
Which still holds the attendance record.
Well, I would dispute that, but okay.
Yeah.
Well,
depending on how you count it.
Depending on how you count it.
It holds the record for people present at one time concurrently.
Well. There is no proof of this, but okay.
But yes, that was my first road meet.
That was your first one, okay.
Yes, same with Mike. Also his first.
Oh, okay.
Rainey's first road meet was Utica in 2020.
Steve, are you alright in there?
Yep.
Yeah. Steve is clenching the various rooms of my condo right now. So
I thought maybe he was kicking a poo.
See, I wasn't going to say it live, but he just did, so whatever.
See, I was resisting. I'm like, I'm not gonna say it, but
you know what I've been resisting saying that I'm just gonna come out and say now?
Oh boy.
I was literally pooing during the kick a poo part.
See?
Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing.
So, you know what? I am glad that I put my PowerPoints together in the way that I do. I am always open to constructive feedback, and I'm glad that that particular it came out at the right time. What can I say?
Nature called.
I did. You see what I did there, didn't you? That's right. Yep. That's right.
Oh, heck yeah. Mark Moore's going to be in my area doing another Maryland trip.
Well, that's good. The two of you should get together and,
heck yeah.
Have tea and biscuits together or something. I don't know.
Heck yeah. We have a tea house in Bel Air.
Do you really?
Yeah, yes.
I did not know this. That's interesting.
It's called Tea by Two.
Is it like...
It's mixed case.
Yeah. Is it like a legit English tea room kind of thing?
Yes.
Oh shit, we got to do that at some point.
Yes, we do.
I think we do.
Yes.
See, you know what? I'm a little bit weird. Full disclosure. So a little bit.
Okay.
And so I
there we go, that's okay.
I'm kind of into weird stuff like that. I'm not gonna lie. So
yes.
This is actually really interesting to find out. Okay. Very nice.
Yes, well maybe we should go when you're here.
You know what? I guess I'm just gonna have to stop by for a spot of tea.
A spot of tea.
So this is how the Broadway extension ends. Okay. Let's see.
A little more busy than how 74 Freeway ends. So.
Well, this one's at least a little bit ceremonious.
All right.
Well, I could play I-40. Why don't we do that? Because I don't think I've uploaded the I-40 stuff onto YouTube yet. So why don't we do that now? All right.
So we're starting again, almost from the same spot we started the last video, except now we're on 40.
Almost, yeah. So as I
North Canadian River, eh?
North Canadian, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the freeway that leads eastward on 40 from I-35 and goes past Tinker Air Force Base, as I mentioned, is also known as the Tinker Diagonal. And so that's where we began this video. This video will take us west across town on the new alignment of 40 that was completed about 10 years ago.
Right, and old 40 would have continued basically, straight ahead from there, but instead we curved left here to go to new 40.
Yeah, at the next 35 split, right?
That's sorry. Yeah, right. No.
Yeah.
Right. No.
So this is right. Yeah.
Very good.
So 35 comes in from the left here because old interchange and because we say so. So they share a concurrency for not even a mile, I think. And then they go their separate ways again up at this next interchange here. So yeah, Laura, we're getting back to the New Year's stuff. So New Year's Eve, it's going to be one show this year, not two.
Show me the way to Amarillo.
Is Laura still here?
I am here.
Oh,
yeah.
You are still here. Okay.
Oh, and Remo's here with me now too.
Oh, all right.
Remo's my cat. Because in the AARoads household, everyone gets involved in roads.
And how is the kitty cat doing?
He's doing well. He's happy to get some attention right now.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, now remember what I said before about 40 curving to left? This curve ahead is where that's true. Ignore what I said before. It's true here, though.
Yeah, so you see the exit for Oklahoma City Boulevard. That's
right. That was 40 basically used to go that way. Obviously, it was wider then. It wasn't just that ramp, but it went that way in general.
Yep. And meanwhile, we curve this way and take a more of a southerly track. So yeah, Laura, as I was saying, it's one show on New Year's, not two. Thank the Lord.
Yes, that was a lot last year to do too.
that was a lot. Well, it was kind of like, we were maybe halfway through the second one when I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, I'm not doing this again. I mean, nothing against you guys, but it's like that's a lot of work.
Also, the toddler was getting quite restless.
Yes,
well, that's true too. Yeah, I was worried about her unplugging stuff. Here's the Skydance Bridge. that we pass underneath.
Yay!
See, this is nice and wide, right? You know, it's nice and wide open. There's
Anyone remember
shoulders on.
Sky Dancers, the toy from the 90s?
Yes!
Yeah, alright, so I'm not the only one who thinks of that when I hear that name. Okay, good.
Yep.
Yeah, so any Laura, any I don't know, any preview material or anything that you want to give us about the New Year's show? Because I don't think you're. Oh, are you coming up next weekend, or what's your deal?
Yeah, that's the plan. My plan is to come up next weekend with Rainey.
Damn, she's gonna be on 3 shows in a row. Can you believe that?
All right, hey,
that's crazy. You know, that's
budding star.
That's, you know what? I have said this to Laura on a few occasions. That I believe that her daughter is going to be running this channel in about 15 plus years or so. So I need to start indoctrinating them early. You know what I mean? It starts from birth, you know. When I met Rainey for the first time when she was like that big, I had a Roadway Whiz t-shirt on.
There you go.
So it was kind of like, you know, I got to start them early, you know. That's how this has to work. So So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. But yeah, that's nice that you'll be coming up next week for Syracuse.
Yeah, because the plan is we want to go ride the holiday train of many colors.
That's right.
On Sunday in New York City.
Yeah, I've never done that either. So
I've done it not on where they're running it now. I did it several years ago when they were running it. When they were running the R9s on the IND.
I still haven't been to the Transit Museum either.
That is where.
Yeah. So
oh my gosh!
I've not done that.
We need to do that.
Lane ends, merge left again in mixed case. They've got an occasional thing for mixed case warning signs and also clear view warning signs. So the issue there, for those who aren't aware, is that clear view. All right,
here we go.
Now that it's congressionally mandated to be allowed, it might be a little different now. But at least the original intent was that clear view was only supposed to be used for white letters on a darker background. You are not supposed to use it for black letters on a lighter background, but when you use it for warning signs, which are black letters on a yellow background, that is therefore not the intended use.
There was no intended use. There was only Texas.
And Pennsylvania.
No, Texas wants it. Pennsylvania is not even a state.
It's a Commonwealth.
Pennsylvania doesn't know what day it is, so. Okay, so that was 40 west across town. I will show you the 40 east video, because I think that's the better video. It gives you a better view, I think, of downtown. So yeah, have fun with this one. I am going to, in the meantime, go clinch other rooms in my condo as well. So
hold your nose.
Okay. Oh boy.
That sounds cool and funny.
Wichita, yes. All right. Well, and also don't get yourself confused here with the sign pointing to Wichita going to the left. That does reference Wichita, Kansas, which is not on I-44. But if you want to get there, it's a bypass of downtown to go up I-35. Not to be confused with Wichita Falls, which is in the other direction on I-44. Keep them straight.
I'm looking at my I-40 page in Oklahoma City is historic. It's all button copy on the old alignment, so that is really sad.
Well,
and I have future I-40 in Oklahoma City, so I must have seen that
while it was still under construction
at the same time. That many years ago. I didn't realize there was under construction that long ago, but wow, I didn't realize I knew about it back then.
Well, I mean, what year were you there? Was it like 2010? Because then,
No, but it was like then or a little earlier, even 8 or 9. It was a long time ago. My goodness. It's right. These numbers were all represented there. 148, 149, 150. They probably... Actually, I don't know if the new mileage is really that different from the old mileage. It's probably pretty close.
Yeah, probably. It's, yeah, if
You
you
have
look
to
at
fudge a couple of tenths, but it's not off by a couple of miles.
Oh, yeah, no. It's way less than a mile than it would be off
Yeah.
by.
It's not like the case in Memphis when they had to renumber 40 to get it around town and have multiple...
Where it actually
of
is
the
off
same
by...
mile.
Like, 40 in Memphis is off by more than 2 miles, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, all the button copy is gone. All these exits are for different roads now than they used to be. So it's all...
Yeah, well, when they got rid of the original infrastructure, they got rid of all the interesting stuff. As far as signage goes.
Yeah, as far as signs.
Yeah.
Not as far as bridges.
Well, and also
Yeah.
at least in this location. As I mentioned, the pre-meat cleaver 152 shields by the airport are still there for now.
Here it comes.
Mm-hmm.
There's that. As I said, that is very noteworthy as you're driving through the city. It's like, wait, those pincers, that's not a...
What in the world is that thing?
Those aren't electrical poles. What's going on? And you realize, this is for me to go under.
Ah. So this is the vantage point that you had.
Oh, yeah.
Well, also, here's the thing.
This is fantastic.
Do we know when exactly this bridge was completed?
I think it was 2012. It would have been shortly after the interstate was completed.
Because here's the thing, right? Is that I drove I-40 eastbound through here at like July 1st, basically, of 2012, maybe June 29th or 30th, and I don't remember at that time going under that bridge. So it may not have been done yet, but that was also months after the I-40 itself had moved.
Right.
So.
It counts for travel mapping, so...
Well, and I've been back there since. I have driven under the bridge as it exists now.
Yeah. Of course you have, yeah.
Well, I'd make sure that my clinch counts old and new.
Truck for On Q in front of us, which is a chain of gas station convenience stores in Oklahoma.
What line is the MTA running the holiday train on? It's on the one train.
The one.
The one, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're running it from 137th Street down to Chambers.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a link in the chat.
You know, as we look at this, I realize that from my page to reference future I-40 tells me I wrote it well before this opened. So that tells you I wasn't there in 2011 or anything.
Uh-huh. All right. So that's the eastbound trip through town. I will show you. What do I want to show you?
Did you overhaul, sir?
I mean, that's a short video if you want to see that.
Oh, cats.
I didn't get to go over it myself.
I saw a sign that said cats.
Yeah, let's do some old 66 pavement here.
Yeah, so show you some old 66 stuff for a minute here.
Yes!
This is my vibe.
This is more Steve's speed.
You can also tell in the video where the joints in the concrete slabs are.
Yeah, the one piece of old 66 I'm missing is where I was clinching OK 66 instead. When I came back for the other sections of road, I didn't necessarily clinch Route 66 in the state if the old road diverged from it. I followed the old road, so I messed up with that because I was too young back then. I would love to come back and drive this bridge just like this.
You were just young and stupid, weren't you?
Nope.
I was young and foolish then. I feel old and foolish now.
Yeah.
They might be Giants quote, by the way.
We need a meet over here. If only we knew someone who lived in the greater Oklahoma City, Norman area who would host a meet.
Well, there was
see.
Actually, right. Well, and this was an interesting thing. Right?
I even went to a meet there. So
I was in Oklahoma City for business.
The money shot. There we go.
Yeah.
Mere days before that meet was held. Unfortunately, since I don't get to choose when exactly I go places for business, I was not able to attend the meet since I flew home a few days too early.
Yeah, so I was right.
That is a great ending to the video.
So I had been in town in early September this year, and I knew that this meet was going to happen, but I knew that there was no way that I was going to be able to be in town for the meet itself, you know. So like I knew that, you know, the host had this list of to-do list items that he wanted to cover on the tour. So I'm like, well, you know, while I'm here, I'll just cover all of them for myself, just so I can see what the general gist of it is, you know. So I was able to do that. So I'll leave you with one last video, and I'll show you what I said earlier was my favorite drive in Oklahoma City, and that is I-44 across the north and west suburbs.
Nice and winding road.
It is the long and winding road, isn't it?
The long and winding road.
Dun, 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 dun.
Thanks, Phil Spector.
When you mentioned the winding road, I was about to say you just got to get used to it, but that's a different song.
Yeah, see, Laura and I and Steve were on the same page with that one, clearly.
Oh, it's mentioned in the chat that we didn't talk about the cute little streetcar in downtown.
You know, I
There's a road video.
thought about including a picture of the little dinky that Oklahoma City has.
Right. So, well, it's also it's not like you know, a vintage historic streetcar or anything. It's modern streetcars, which okay. If you're into that sort of thing, it's cool, I guess. I think it's a bus on rails.
You know, the one in Oklahoma City kind of looks like that too.
Actually, I think the more interesting thing that we didn't mention, we talked about Bricktown, we talked about the couple of neighborhoods that are under 235. Also, just north of downtown, there's the neighborhood that's the old dealership row, where they have a bunch of buildings that used to be a bunch of car dealerships, and many of them are still preserved with the original architecture and you know, the signs and whatever. Actually, when I was in Oklahoma City on business back in October, one of the nights we had dinner at a restaurant that was in the old Packard dealership.
Nice.
So
Nice.
It is still decked out in the Packard.
The Packard
livery
sign
and
is
all
there.
You can
Wow.
still buy yourself a brand new Packard.
No, you can buy yourself hipster food, but
Ooh. Okay, that's neat. Was that like in the area of Old Route 66, or is that something else?
a little far south for that, I
Okay.
think. But yeah.
Because one thing that I've noticed that they've done, especially in Oklahoma, is that along the old US 66, they've gone out of their way to like preserve like the old signage and the old business fronts and all that stuff. You see a lot of that.
Right, well,
happen
because they know that tourists will go, ooh, Route 66, and you know.
You see that a lot in Tulsa, especially. I don't know about this area specifically because I wasn't following the old 66 through Oklahoma City, but in Tulsa I did, and again, this is another topic for another show, but there's still a lot of old 66 memorabilia, old neon signs, old stuff like that in Tulsa, so I assume there's stuff like that in Oklahoma City, but I just didn't find it.
An odd exit left blob for you there.
Yes, this is one of the best parts of this highway, the exit left blobs, and there's multiple of them along this stretch.
I like the highway. It's just winding left and right. The grass median. It screams old school.
Yeah, and I took that exact exit.
Did you?
Once in October, right? Well, because if you go this way, there's a Whataburger that's like about a mile west of that exit. And I don't go to places Whataburger exists without going to Whataburger, so I went to Whataburger.
Yes.
I passed the menu without visiting. This screams Connecticut to me more than anything.
It's got a bit of Hartford in it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Left exits
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
freeway. Yep.
Well, the other fun thing too with that trip was that so I still have some lingering status with Avis from when I used to travel a lot for business pre-COVID, and so Avis actually upgraded me for free to a Mustang convertible. So I got to take that exit after you know, darting left across a few lanes with the top down.
I do that with my Civic. What do you mean?
It's less stylish that way, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Sunroof open, hands out. Yeah.
That's it, you know? We are going to be closing up shop here in a few minutes, so if anybody has any last-minute questions, comments, things they want us to address now's a good time to get it out there because we will be ending this show in the next few minutes.
I want to tell a story.
Once upon a time, Laura told a story.
So this one time at band camp.
Laura's stuck at... Wait.
No, I just want to say, with all the, poking fun at, I know y'all like to poke fun at, like, the streetcar lines and buses and stuff. But I will say that the cutest thing that signaled to me that Rainey is also a transportation geek is that one evening we were meeting up with Mike at a park and ride, and Rainey saw a bus pull up. And she wanted to get on the bus. And I told her we weren't getting on the bus because we were going to go and get in Daddy's car. And she started crying.
Aww.
So I ended up taking her over to the bus. And poor driver just probably wanted a break. And I was like knocking on the door like, hey, can we get on your bus? My daughter really wants to like run around your bus.
Aww.
And we did. And that made her a little less sad. But she still was sad that we didn't get to like ride it. And I told her, don't worry, we will definitely ride more buses in the future. But yes, how many 3-year-olds are upset?
Yeah. A 3-year-old future transit geek. I like it.
Yeah.
At that age, I would have really, really wanted to ride the train. I wouldn't have cared about the bus.
I would have wanted to go through Lincoln Tunnel and Holland Tunnel again and ride the Pulaski Skyway. Not would have, I did. I love tunnels and bridges back then.
There you go. Okay. Well, I think we've pretty much talked about everything there is to talk about, right?
Question in the chat. Will the from Trainer Red Mario, will the turnpikes take Easy Pass?
Not yet.
Yeah. Short answer.
Maybe eventually.
Short answer. Yeah.
Not.
MPW answered that.
Yes. Short answer is no. It's still limited to the blob of interoperability between Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. At some point, God knows when, we may see national interoperability of some sort.
Once Florida went to Easy Pass, to me that was the tipping point.
We have Florida and Minnesota with Easy Pass now too.
Enough agencies have tipped in one direction that eventually the holdouts will lose, but they're going to hold out.
Right. Well, I think the challenge you have at this point is you have agencies that have tipped into accepting Easy Pass, but you also have things like the Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas triad, and that are very much into their sticker tags,
and California
that don't necessarily really like the idea of having to change some of their hardware around to be able to read the hard case active Easy Pass tags, and
it's going to take a next generation of these things, a next generation of reading. Once you go all electronic tolling, it's going to become easier. Eventually things get replaced. It takes, I want to say 6 to 7 years that things have to get replaced. So the next go-around, the hand will be pushed a little bit to get the devices that'll read things. It takes time, it takes the right equipment in place, but because of the limited lifespan, it will be within our lifetimes. You'll see national interoperability.
Well, you would
really. I think the trickier sell is going to be getting agencies in the Northeast to start accepting things that aren't Easy Pass. None of them want to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's especially within the New York City area, agencies like the MTA and the Port Authority are very much like, no, we take Easy Pass.
Yeah. What is this? What is this Pike Pass thing?
We want to be the national standard. Go away.
Yeah.
You may recall that when the state of Kentucky wanted to join Easy Pass, the MTA in New York actually vetoed their application because they were not interested in actually going all in on the Easy Pass technology. They wanted to also offer customers a sticker tag that would only work on their bridge and not with the other Easy Pass states, and the MTA saw this as a threat to the hegemony of the hard case Easy Pass tag, and they basically said, we're not letting you be a full member of our agency if you don't go all in on the hard case tags.
Some would say that our friend from Kentucky visiting New York would also be a threat, but I assume the two are not related.
Not my friend from Kentucky. She'd be fine.
Your friend from Kentucky?
Yeah, she would not have any problem here.
All right, we're not talking about the same person, are we?
Clearly.
Okay.
Right, because that person is not Steve's friend.
Yes.
Well,
and does not identify outwardly as female.
No, that we know of.
Outwardly, I said.
I don't know. Anything else? Should we close up shop? We good?
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Yeah. So thanks everybody for watching. And by the way, before I go, yeah, because I was gonna bring this up when Anthony was talking about the dinky in Oklahoma City, but you know, if you want to think about like 3-year-old transit geeks and stuff like that, like I've always kind of thought that
I like this MPW guy.
What do you call it? Like those little light rail dinky trains are they're like baby trains, you know. And then if they eat their vegetables and they grow up big, they get to be like big old like BNSF freight trains.
No, they get to be roller coasters.
Or whatever.
Again,
you know?
I like this MPW guy. He's speaking our language here.
Well, you should, you know, hang out with him sometime.
He's gotta. If he's gonna become a regular like Carlos, then we're all in here.
Okay, that's cool. Well, we are going to wrap this up, so thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this show, and thank you for watching, with a special thanks to Steve, and to Anthony, and to Laura, who are my co-panelists tonight and helped bring this show to you. We hope to see you this time next week, same bat time, same bat channel for our next live show. Really looking forward to it. We'll have an all-new panel next week. Well, except maybe for Laura, because she wants to be on every single show now, apparently, until the end of time. But we will deal with that next week, and until then, we will talk to you later. So enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
What's your name?
Go Army. Beat Navy.
MPW. Cokeman. Not literally. I was gonna
All right.